Good morning and welcome to our meeting this morning. Call the meeting to order. It's nice to have such a room full of people here to come watch us in action here. I think that's what you're all here for, isn't it? Anyway, first thing on the agenda today is the approval of the agenda, and we do have one addition.
Move to approve with addition.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the addition. All in favor?
Aye.
One thing I do want to recognize is that a donation, we received a donation from the Fargo Force, in the amount of $2,431. There are 4 breacher packs, they're called, for in case there's, and they're donated, these 4 packs were donated to Ulen, Barnesville, Linden, and Dilworth schools. In case of any active shooter or other large threats at schools, I guess there's a prick in there, pry, bar, bolt cutter, sledgehammer. So I appreciate to the Fargo Force for the $2,400 donation. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go on to Sheriff Empting. I think you've got a presentation to do today.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thanks for having us here this morning. We are here this morning to honor and recognize one of our fine Clay County citizens for assistance that he provided to the Sheriff's Office on the St. Valentine's Day blizzard this past February. So, Mr. Tomberdahl, if you'd please come up. And Gabe, give you that. Read the nomination letter. The nomination letter was presented to me by Lieutenant Gabe Tweeten. This is on February 14, 2023. Clay County experienced a blizzard with wind gusts over 60 miles per hour and some of the nastiest visibility conditions I can remember in my 17 years with the Sheriff's Office. This will forever be known as the Valentine's Day blizzard. During this storm, our deputies responded to dozens of calls of stranded motorists, especially on the Interstate 94 and Highway 10 corridors. At 8:40 p.m., a female called the Red River Regional Dispatch Center indicating her vehicle was in the ditch on County Road 11 near 150th Avenue North. Her 6-year-old son and herself were in the vehicle, and she was working on getting a tow truck to her location. At 9:22 p.m., a Clay County deputy made phone contact with her, and she informed him that she had a full tank of fuel and that they were doing fine. But to the extremely poor visibility conditions, they were not able to get a tow truck to their location. At 12:20 a.m., the female called dispatch to report her vehicle was no longer running, meaning the two no longer had heat. The air temperature was around 0 degrees, and the wind chill was in the double digits below zero, creating life-threatening conditions. A short while later, I spoke to you on the phone and offered to try and get to the female's location. I left Ulen heading west on County 34 and made it approximately 1.5 miles before I was forced to turn around due to not being able to make out any lines on the road or discern the road from the ditch. I've worked many winter weather events, and this may be the worst visibility I can recount. At this point, I called an individual I know that lives a couple miles north of where the mother and child were stranded. This person indicated they couldn't see their shed from their house and didn't believe they'd be able to make it to the location in a pickup truck. They did, however, provide me with a phone number for Scott Tomberdahl, who lives under 1 mile from where the mother and child were stranded. At 12:44 a.m., I gave Scott a call and informed him of the situation. Scott didn't hesitate to come to their aid. Scott said he would see if he could reach them and bring them back to his house for the remainder of the storm. I gave Scott the best location I had for the stranded mother and child and provided him with her cell phone number. I then called the mother back and explained to her that Scott was going to try and get to them. At 1:44 a.m., I spoke to Scott, and he indicated he was able to reach them with his utility vehicle, which has a cab on it. He said they were safe at his house and could remain there until the storm passed. I called Scott the following morning to thank him and see if the Sheriff's Office could be of any assistance in getting the mother and child back to their home. Scott indicated he had already brought them back to their home. I thank Scott for his efforts and willingness to assist us by coming to someone else's aid in a time of need. Scott said no problem, with the tone suggested he had done something as simple as picking up a pen I had dropped on the ground. On February 16, 2023, I spoke to the female that had been stranded with her son. She explained to me that the battery had died on her vehicle prior to Scott getting to her location, and there were no emergency lights flashing to act as a beacon for Scott to see. She did have a flashlight on inside the vehicle. She said that, according to Scott, was just barely was just barely able to see that light to guide him to that vehicle. On the ride back to Scott's residence, she said Scott had to stop several times to get his bearings before slowly driving on. Once at the house, Scott and his girlfriend welcomed them into their home. She told me that she is so grateful for what Scott did that night to get her son and herself to safety. She couldn't say enough good about how well Scott and his girlfriend treated them at their house and even brought them home once the storm had subsided. I feel Scott's actions exemplify what it means to be a good citizen, neighbor, and person. Scott rescued a young mother and child that were in a potentially life-threatening situation. Based on Scott's actions during the Valentine's Day blizzard, I'd like you to consider awarding Scott Tomerdahl, the Clay County Sheriff's Office, Citizen Citation for Distinguished Service. And that is why we are here today. And Scott, we cannot be more thankful and grateful for your assistance you provided to us that day. Scott's been very supportive of the Sheriff's Office over the past several years, and that goes back to his friendship with retired Deputy Steffes, who's in the crowd here today as well. So Scott, thank you very much for your work. Greatly appreciate it. You should read that too. I'll read it. Yeah. I still have to hold it out here too. So the Citizen Citation for Distinguished Service, Scott Tomerdahl, in appreciation and recognition for your heroic life-saving efforts on February 14th, 2023, the Valentine's Day blizzard, presented by the Clay County Sheriff's Office.
Congratulations there, Scott, and thank you so much. Okay. With that, we'll move on. Any citizens to be heard there? Is anybody in the audience that wants to talk about something that's not on the agenda? Steve, did you have anybody that?
Nothing new, Mr. Chair.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the payment of the bills.
Make a motion to pay the bills, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Pay the bills, all in favor?
Aye.
With that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes on March 14th.
Move for approval of the minutes of March 14th.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes on March 14th. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 2, request approval of resolution 2023-09, declaring state of emergency in the preparedness of spring flooding. Gabe, you handling that?
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Well, we're here again. Last year, I was able to report good news that the melt had proceeded and things were looking good, but this year it's a different story. So again, I'm seeking a resolution to declare a state of emergency so we can begin flood preparations.
Okay.
I believe in your packet, the resolution should be there, so I would need your signature, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Gabe, if you could just summarize briefly why to the public, why we act on something like this, and obviously we understand starting the clock, but those in the public may not.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back last week on the 23rd, the National Weather Service did put out their probabilistic forecast, which is just based off of snow depth, moisture content, and their predictions on the weather trends. So right now, the Red River in Fargo will most likely reach major flood stage. There's a 90% chance that crest will be at 30 feet, 50% chance that it'll crest at 34.2. So, anything once it reaches major flood stage, in Fargo and Moorhead, obviously Moorhead on our side of the river. There is some mitigation efforts that need to take place, some actions. There'll be some roads closed, some localized sandbagging that they do around things like their utility boxes and such. And then out some of our tributaries within the county, the Buffalo River at Dilworth. So north of Dilworth is where the gauge is by Concordia Church. That's predicted to crest, 75% chance that that'll crest at 20.6 feet and a 50% chance that it'll crest at 21.6 feet. So again, just those levels alone, we know throughout the county we're going to have some impacts to our county roads, township roads, and down by Sabin also kind of the same story. Sabin was a little less. It appears to be a little less snowpack down in the Barnesville area, but that can obviously change. But that was still predicted to reach moderate, the South Branch to reach moderate flood stage. And so I've been meeting pretty regularly with Justin and just kind of devising a plan, because the Highway Department obviously plays a very large role in preparing, opening up culverts, ditches. So that's some of the actions that we'd look to start here in the near future before the melt actually gets going. So once it does happen, water is flowing towards the rivers much more quickly and smoothly, so we can prevent maybe some of that overland flooding, backing up in a culvert and then flooding out a section of land or two. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, thank you for repairing out ahead of the planning.
Mr. Chair, I'd move Resolution 2023-09.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions then. Maybe for Justin. A lot of times we have a lot of rural township roads that go under, and do townships have their own barricade systems, or do you work with them on that?
So most of them have their own barricade systems, but they do communicate with us when they do close roads, because we have our ultimate map that shows what's open and what's closed, and the sheriff's department does use that quite a bit.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Not all in favor of the resolution 2023-09?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Next thing we got, request approval of grant agreement and supporting resolution for 2023-10.
Yeah, so we did receive an LRAP grant for SAP 14618-016. This was the mill and overlay on County Road 18, and the amount of the grant is $800,000. So as required by MnDOT to use the grant funds, a grant agreement and supporting resolution are required. That just allows us to, once we spend the money, to actually request it from MnDOT.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 2023-10.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Any further discussion?
I want to say thanks to Justin for work in obtaining that. The project that those funds are going towards, they were in our 5-year plan, and that was in our 5-year plan without that $800,000 in it. And so obtaining that $800,000 has really helped us be able to catch up a little bit on some of the previous awards that came in really high. So thank you, Justin, for your efforts in obtaining that. It's really, really good.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. With that, we'll go on to an information session on the West Central Regional Water District Project. Steve, and I don't know, Rocky would be talking to us too, or Steve's will handle it, okay?
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to thank the Clay County Commission for inviting us to speak today. about a very important, very exciting project, the West Central Regional Water District project. It is a water regionalization project that has the potential to impact 15,000 plus citizens in western Minnesota, and kind of change the landscape in rural water in western Minnesota. With me today, I have Aaron Belka, Mayor of Felton. Felton is a very interested partner in the project and a vital team member in this. And on the call, I have Daniel Marks from Flaherty and Hood. He will go through all of the information regarding governance, formation of the district, basically anything legal for that would involve the county. So many of you have probably seen this presentation at the Clay County Township Association meeting last week. So I see you have a lot on the agenda today. I will kind of get through these first 10 slides rather quickly, and then get to the meat and potatoes with the governance. If you have any questions at any time while I'm going through this, feel free to interject. I'd rather have it, a conversation and answer any questions that may come up. So the West Central Regional Water District presentation that I'll go through today will kind of outline the need for the project, how the project came about, what a regional approach is, a case study with the city of Climax, progress to date, funding applications to date, and then participation in the West Central Regional Water District. So the need for this project came about, well, it's been there, but, really came to our attention in fall of 2020. The city of Climax was running into some issues with aging infrastructure, high levels of contaminants in their water system, a various multitude of things, with project costs being far in excess of what a small city like that can afford based over their population base. As we came to meet with Climax and see what their needs are, we heard from many rural residents, right in the region of Climax, up and down this Highway 75 corridor, that they have the same water needs. They have high arsenic, they have wells that are failing, they have wells that are 500 feet deep that honestly they can't afford to re-drill. So, the project kind of developed and looked at, hey, maybe there's a need out here that hasn't been addressed that could really impact rural western Minnesota in a positive light. So those concerns, as we found out, were not only subject just to Climax. Many of these small cities, I think we have 10 in phase one of the project and 16 in the current project area. Most of them have aging infrastructure, have real hard trouble, like most of us, keeping and finding licensed water operators. The capital costs spread out over that small population it's very hard to overcome. It makes water rates that are in the hundreds of dollars, and that's just not feasible. There's the ever-growing concern of emerging contaminants. Current city infrastructure and places do not have the ability to treat for all of these contaminants. And also additional water quality concerns. There's high amounts of hardness, high amounts of arsenic, things of that nature. So one reason the need kind of came about is arsenic contamination in private wells. Tested wells in Clay, Norman, and Polk counties far exceed the EPA standards of 10 micrograms per liter of arsenic. 39% of tested wells in Clay County exceeded the EPA MCL, 43% in Norman County, 21% in Polk County. Arsenic in water, not a great thing. Long-term exposure can increase your risk of cancer, have nervous system issues, and lead to high blood pressure. So proposed service area, where this project had really started, like I had mentioned, is the Climax to Halsted area. You know, the city of Climax, we'd been working with East Central Regional Water District, the North Dakota regional partner in this project. As we were working on that with Climax, the city of Halsted approached East Central, and they had very similar concerns, issues. They were very interested in being a regional partner in this water district. Over the last 3 years, as we've had more meetings, more people have reached out to us. The project area has grown to the east end of Norman County, south into Clay County, and up almost to northeast of Mentor. It seems like this project kind of grows at every couple months. There's just, you find more need and more need the more people you talk to out there. Where it really expanded eastward is we were at a previous Norman County meeting discussing the project, and Norman County said, yeah, we want to be in this project, but we want the entire county to be part of this project. So at that point, the district expanded further east and went straight north to the Red Lake Polk County line. Currently, the proposed service area is Polk, Norman, Clay counties. In the current service area, there is about 15,000 people that can benefit. East Central Regional Water District would have the ability to supply 360 million gallons per year. And depending on how the project phases out, and to what extent Clay County is interested, if interested in the project, there will have to be additional regional water plants identified and selected. So what are the benefits of a regional water system? High quality, redundant replacement of finished water, adequate water capacity, large service area, which lessens the impact on individual water bills. O&M replacement costs are spread out amongst the larger population rather than one small city or, you know, one household. Worry-free water, highly resistant to drought, climate change, things of that nature. And there's opportunities for population growth and economic development, as well as population stabilization in rural areas. We've heard, you know, quite a few stories of, you know, our well failed at the farmstead. The property's essentially useless without it. So we're gonna move into town or move somewhere else. Other, you know, kind of interesting things that come up through this process is there has been a few larger businesses that have approached us with interest of this project and are really looking forward to hoping they can have a rural water source. So a lot of things that come up is, what is it gonna be cost to customer? It's not gonna be affordable. You know, I don't have a water bill right now, or my water bill's $30. How am I gonna afford this? With this regional approach, you know, what needs to be taken into consideration, with East Central's water, it's a reverse osmosis water. It's a very high quality finished water. You eliminate the need for water softeners. You eliminate the need for in-house reverse osmosis systems. $5 to $10 a month in savings per 60 pounds of salt. $25 a month savings in water softener rental. $10 to $20 a month savings of additional inline water filters. Rural water also reduces the need to replace water heaters, stained appliances, etc. Hear often that people go through water heaters quite frequently in rural areas due to high hardness in water. Another benefit is for the agricultural community. With rural water, what we hear from the majority of farmers is reduced need of surfactants and other chemical additives during agricultural and spraying operations. So looking at the evolution of a regional water system, This is East Central Regional Water District on the west side of the river. It spans from basically Grand Forks to Grandin and west to Mayville. 1971 through 1980 was original system construction. As you can see here, it's kind of a smaller service area. 1981 to 2014, it's really expanded. You filled up the whole East Central boundary. At 2015 through 2022, they extended into Agassiz Water Users District, and it is officially a regional water system. So as I mentioned earlier, when we're doing this analysis and when small cities come and ask us, is this the right choice for us? Is this something that would benefit us? We perform for them a life cycle cost analysis. The city of Climax went through the life cycle cost analysis because they needed costly water tower, water treatment plant updates. And through this process, we determined that regionalizing the water use through East Central Regional Water would be the best solution for them. As of December 2022, they are on the East Central Regional Water District and are currently being served water. So when we're doing these life cycle cost analysis, we try to evaluate all alternatives that would be beneficial and solve the problem of the small communities. Through this process, we looked at 5 alternatives, one being the do-nothing alternative, not listed, but it wasn't feasible. They had immediate needs that needed to be sorted out. Alternative 2 was new groundwater supply with iron and manganese treatment with storage. Alternate 2A plus 2 is the addition of a reverse osmosis treatment method. The reason reverse osmosis is there again is because it is a high quality water treatment that can rid most contaminants from water. Alternative 3 was water service from East Central Regional Water District, which is in North Dakota. Alternative 4 was water service from Marshall and Polk Rural Water, which is the water district just to the north of Climax in Marshall and Polk County. During the life cycle cost analysis, it was determined service from East Central had a present worth of $1.7 million, which was the low-cost alternative, as compared to $4.5 million for a reverse osmosis alternative and $2.8 million for the iron and manganese removal, as well as $2.5 million from the service from Marshall and Polk. When going through and evaluating alternatives, also what's looked at is the city's water usage. For alternates 3 and 4, what was used was 8.6 million gallons of water use per year, and that water use is then evaluated on basis of O&M by cost per 1,000 gallons, because the city will be eliminating O&M from running a water plant, having a water tower, doing periodic testing, etc. So O&M is essentially reduced to the form of a water purchase. Water purchase from East Central was $23,103. Water purchase from Marshall Polk, $73,550. Combining this with additional O&M, short-lived asset replacement, process chemical, professional services, it came out to an annual O&M cost of $3.29 versus $10.65 from Marshall Polk per 1,000 gallons of water. So new proposed water district, to date, we've had letters of support and resolutions from Climax, Neelsville, Beltrami, Shelley, Hendrum, Halsted, Borup, Felton, Purley, and Georgetown, Polk and Norman counties, Minnesota Rural Water Association, 3 economic development entities. To date, there's been 27 public meetings regarding this, 130 testimonials from rural residents. Earlier in 2022, Norman County, when they passed the resolution officially forming the water district and being a part of the water district, selected Flaherty and Hood as the legal services team to facilitate the official and legal formation of the district. In the last session, legislative session, Senator Eakin and Representative Markert drafted a bill for general obligation bonds for the 2022 session. Nothing had happened in the 2022 session, obviously, so funding did not come at that stage. In this 2023 session, we have House File 832 and Senate File 1331 going through the legislative process in hopes that we make the final bonding bill. Legislators listed on these bills are Representative Joy, Representative Keeler, Representative Keel, as well as authors in the Senate would be Senator Kupek and Senator Johnson. Additional funding applications that have been submitted to agencies including U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Minnesota PFA for the PPL. Recently, we've submitted to Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith, and Representative Fishbach's office for congressionally direct spending applications. Currently, Neillsville is going through a PER, professional engineering report, and application to USDA Rural Development to secure a funding package similar to what Climax did. We have secured funding from both Polk and Norman counties. Polk County contributed $584,000 in ARPA funding to increase the north river crossing from an 8-inch to a 12-inch to allow for an additional 600 gallons per minute that can be used in both rural Polk, Norman, and Clay counties. Norman County has also Norman County has also provided $30,000 to the project to secure initial legal funding for Flaherty and Hood to navigate the process and formation of the water district. So critical next steps, we have all these funding applications out. It's, try to secure additional funding so a true preliminary engineering report can be completed. This is essentially would look at, how many are we going to have within this district? What cities are going to be here? What are average peak demands? Is this water going to be used for agriculture, residential, commercial? And then start evaluating different alternatives and regional partners in the project. Next continued steps are to work with Flaherty and Hood to finalize the district formation and enter the judicial proceedings to become a public water authority. The district is formed by resolution and name right now, but has to go through the judicial court because it's a multi-county system. In this process, the judicial court will require an engineering opinion and report to act on. And during this process, there will also be appointment of a board of directors. The project will continue to update and apply for federal and state funding as the project progresses and changes. And we'll eventually secure enough money to begin project build out to provide safe, sustainable water supply to residents of western Minnesota. So next steps is pretty much the legal process that we'll use to kind of navigate to form the district. On the call I had mentioned, we have Daniel Marks from Flaherty and Hood, who Norman County had hired to navigate this process. So at this stage, I'll turn it off to Daniel because anytime I try to act like an attorney, I get in trouble, so.
Thanks, Stephen. Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Again, I'm Daniel Marks. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Flaherty and Hood based in St. Paul. And I really specialize in doing environmental and administrative law, working primarily with cities and counties and public utilities, primarily in greater Minnesota. And as Stephen mentioned, and I was before you maybe a couple of months ago where we were talking about this initially, and I believe that you should have a draft resolution that Norman County asked me to provide for you. That is basically the same resolution that Norman and Polk signed. But the way that this process works, as Stephen mentioned, is because it is a multi-county district. The counties that so choose form the district itself, which right now legally the district has been formed for Norman and Polk counties. And so we've legally established the district within those jurisdictional bounds. And then we would want Clay County to adopt the resolution to do the same. And that resolution essentially authorizes it forms the district within Clay County's jurisdiction, and then it authorizes the initiation of judicial proceedings to move forward. And so right now we have authorization from Norman and Polk County to move forward, but we wanted to wait before we commence the judicial proceedings process to give Clay County an opportunity to adopt the resolution so that you can be in the process from the get-go. And I'll talk about why that is helpful or beneficial for the district. So first off, as Stephen mentioned, really we have the formation of the district, and then once the district is legally formed, we have to commence the judicial proceedings, and then the public water system gets authorized by judicial process, which would take place in Norman County District Court. And so once we're all ready to go and we're pretty much ready, we would file a request to commence the formal proceedings in Norman County District Court. And I'll talk a little bit about what those proceedings look like here on the next slide. So first off, as I mentioned, we need the resolutions adopted. We have them from Norman and Polk. The county responsibilities in this process, passing those resolutions, and then really staying engaged in the judicial court process. Now, as I mentioned the last time we were here, nobody has gone through this judicial process for at least a decade, probably more. And so we're kind of reinventing the wheel in a way. The court administration, they don't have people on staff that do this every day, so it's going to be a bit of a process. But essentially, the way that the process works is we file in district court. There will be the court will administer a notice process. They will appoint an engineer to conduct an engineering analysis and preliminary report. And then they will order really a 3-stage process for public input from the various counties and individual members within those counties, individual citizens within those counties, to be able to ask questions and vet the system. And then the court will make a final recommendation, either approving or denying the public water system. And then if the court approves the public water system, the court will establish a board or a commission for the public water system for governance. And that board will be created from the counties that sign the petition on a per capita basis. So depending upon the population proposed to be served from each county, there will be representation on the board. Once the board is established by the court, then the counties will then need to pass an additional resolution, essentially granting that board, unilateral authority to continue to operate consistent with statute and state law. So that's what the process looks like. There are 2 public hearings that would be administered by the court, at least 2, and a thorough vetting process, which would require, like I said, an engineering analysis, an economic analysis, lots of opportunity for public comment and input, and then finally a judicial order that would establish a governing body from the 3 counties. And the reason that we think it's important for Clay County to adopt the resolution now, if Clay County wants to be a part of this district kind of on the founding end, is because it's much easier in the judicial process to have Clay County adopt the resolution before we get started than to try to come in later. It would require additional filings in the judicial process and just make it more complicated to get Clay County authorized to be on the, have Clay County representatives on the commission and the board. And it would, add some additional hoops for Clay County in the future to try to join in later. And so really what we were hoping is to try to get Clay County to address any questions or concerns that you have. And if you think that this is something that you want to join in on, have you adopt the resolution as soon as you're comfortable so that we can move forward with the district court process. So I'll pause for any questions on what the establishment proceedings look like, any questions you have in terms of governance or structure, but that's the high level overview.
Is that the end of your presentation, or is he?
The next steps after, for the formation of West Central, to consider if Clay County is interested, pass the resolution to join the water district, and to what extent Clay County would like to be involved. There's going to be additional public information meetings as this project moves on, as we hear more from the public. There's going to be additional city council meetings. My next month is full of them, trying to keep everyone up to date on the process, in the loop as much as possible, try being clear and transparent as we possibly can. There's going to be additional surveys to gauge interest, project interest, determine future phasing once the district is formed, and additional resolutions of support from townships, cities, economic development committees, et cetera. Currently, we've also built a project website to direct people to that would like information on the project. I have the website address listed below at wcrwd@ae2s.hub.arcgis.com. If that's too much to type in, which it's a lot, said you can also scan the QR code with your cell phone that's listed on this presentation. And in that site, you can find additional information about the project, fill out a survey if you're interested. In that survey, determine, what are you going to use the water for? Are you interested in being a board member on this, et cetera? Anyone has any additional questions, feel free to ask me, or I have also Aaron Belka from Felton, small city facing many of these issues, so.
Kevin?
Thank you. Yeah, I've written down a few things here, and I thank you for coming back. I know you guys gave a presentation to us quite some time ago, and it was kind of new to us, and we didn't know an awful lot about that project at the time, and we've obviously since learned more. Your presentation at the Township Officers Meeting was very good. But a lot of my questions did go to governance. Some of it has been answered, and some of it is still kind of confusing to me. I understand it's going to be a district judge who's going to establish a lot of the grounds for this formation of this group. And I know it's the county boards who will appoint people to ultimately this governing body, right? Is that, am I correct in, okay. Some of this gets into the weeds further on down the line. I say this coming from an area, one time of an area that needed water that didn't have it. And my area happened to be where we were just outside of the city, Moorhead city limits, and so we worked with the city. And there was an awful lot of, there was kind of 50% wanted and 50% didn't. It was an ugly one, but what it gets down to is, some of these things is, we may have significant, certainly our small cities are interested in it. Once you get outside of that, and if you look at your, number 5 on your presentation, that map, can you pull that up? So I can kind of explain. There we go. So, I look at those gold lines back in my days, and I looked at those as maybe being some main lines that would go out there. And then from there, depending on the interest, you would get into sublines or smaller lines. We referred to them in our deal as lateral lines. And that's basically on how it's determined who pays what for the water system. Would this work in that same fashion?
That's essentially what it is. So when many water districts were formed initially, the cities weren't really looked at as, the primary constituent of the water district. What had happened is it had gone rurally first, and then we came back over the years because, now more and more cities were falling into this issue, and lines were undersized. So the thought process behind this is first engage all the larger population bases, all of the cities, gauge interest, and then with these larger population bases, it definitely makes the project cheaper, and it's more set up to serve rural customers. So that is kind of the intent of the current design.
I guess in a lot of these questions, I'm not necessarily asking for me, but I'm asking for somebody who might have some interest in it in the rural area. But obviously, any interest has to be weighted by the cost, right? Anything we all do has to be weighted by the cost. And so if you have an area and you have a lateral line going by, and that lateral line might feed 6 to 8 rural properties,
Yep.
right? And what if you have 4 or 5 of those who aren't interested, and that lateral line goes by? Are they still paying for that lateral line cost, even though they're not going to hook up to it?
No. So the way that it works is you pay your cost share through your sign up. This isn't just assessed to property owners as you're going by. If you are an interested member and user, a lot of times that rural water districts operate versus how, say, a watershed operates is the end user that's getting the water is essentially paying, their fair share. When we do a project, we look at, we have 500 users that want to be a part of this project. We have 75% grant funding available. We have an additional 25% of local share that'll need to be funded somehow. That local share ends up being funded through your initial sign-up fee and the rate structure that you are on when you sign up. So essentially, everyone ends up paying their fair share, and it makes it's a lot cheaper to get on as a project progresses rather than an individual user wanting a line ran to them outside of a project.
And a couple other things, just maybe I'll take the time to learn more on. I hope everybody else will too. That you don't have to comment a lot right now but like the water, you know, right now the water supply comes from the North Dakota side. What is the guarantee of water supply? And how do, you know, you talked about current rates out there.
Yep.
Are the rates set by the folks from North Dakota, or are the rates set by the commission that's established here?
So the rates will eventually be set by the commission that's established. Currently, the city of Climax and Neelsville are contracted with East Central Regional Water District. So East Central Regional Water District sets for the rates for them. What that looks like after the district is formed ultimately will be up to the boards of directors. Because what East Central will essentially be is a bulk supplier from the system. So there'll be a contracted known water rate. And from there, the board of directors choosing to represent this district will determine what cost structures look like for those that sign up.
And then lastly, thank you. Then lastly, on the county responsibilities, of course, the one that really attracted my attention is pay external costs associated with proceedings, engineering, but the counties will only pay the court portion if proceedings are dismissed. To what level are we as the three counties financially responsible for this project?
Daniel, would you mind answering?
Yeah, so
Campbell's?
right now, the way that the process works is once we file the petition, the district court is supposed to take over. And the district court will appoint the engineer, and the district court would, again, in theory, this hasn't been done for a long time, would be paying the costs associated with the public notice, with the engineering costs, etc. Now, the way that the statute is written, the counties don't have to put up a bond to support anything if, for some reason, this district is dismissed by the district court. But the potential liability for the counties that's clear in statute is that if the process unfolds and, you know, the costs mount up in terms of the engineering report, et cetera, then, and if for some reason the district court, you know, dismisses the petition or dismisses the request to establish the judicial water district, then the counties who signed the resolution would be potentially on the hook for the costs if the court finds that the district is not, you know, beneficial to the public, doesn't serve the public interest, doesn't provide for public health, etc. So that would be the risk at this point going forward, is you could potentially be on the hook for the costs if the district court says, no, we find that what you're trying to do isn't in the public interest, it doesn't provide, you know, for the public health, etc.
And those engineer costs that we're talking about, and those are the things that we're talking about here that would add up, and legal fees. If the project goes through, do those costs then become part of the cost of the project then that's reimbursed through rates?
That is the intention, yes. But again, there's going to be a lot of latitude for the district court. And so that the statute anticipates that those things would then be addressed by the district once it's formed and established. But the court will have some discretion to, you know, decide how some of those things get addressed during the process. So I don't want to, given that we haven't seen this been done for 10 or 20 years, I don't want to, you know, over predict. But the way that it's supposed to work is that, yes, the costs would then be passed on to the district as operating costs going forward. And the district is then responsible for itself financially.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Well, just a few questions. So in the boundary areas that, as you're proposing currently, and again, as we look toward possibility of signing a resolution, are these boundaries fixed? And why I'm saying that is, I don't know what the demand is or what the cost will be, but what about the rest of Clay County? Is this as far south as it would go for this? And then the other question would be, is the source coming out of the North Dakota East Central Regional Watershed District, is it big enough for all this for long-term? And maybe kind of back to Commissioner Campbell's question, what if something wants to grow on the North Dakota side? You know what I mean? I mean, how are those priorities? I would imagine it's contract of some way, but yet at the same time, I would doubt there'd be an end date to those contracts too.
So to hit on your first question, is this district, as the boundary sits, set in stone? No, it is not. It becomes, at this stage, it can go as far south in Clay County as you'd like. But where the line was drawn originally, it's already expanded so much from being just ending at Halstead. And then just as we've learned more, it's extended south. Now that Norman and Polk have passed their resolutions, the district, for the most part, is likely going to be within the extent of that boundary in those counties. And Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong here, but through the judicial court process, I do believe that Polk County may have the potential, if the court finds it beneficial, to extend to the rest of the Polk County boundaries. Obviously easier to do that up front, but it's obviously at each county's discretion and what each county has heard from its populace. Next question regarding, does East Central have enough water to serve this entire district and as it sits and possibly more? The answer is no. Through that judicial court process, additional regional partners are going to have to be found for long-term project phasing. This project won't happen overnight. Build out, I could see being, 10 plus years ultimately. Places we would look at as regional partners, would be likely larger municipalities that have the staffing, that have the infrastructure in place to supply and be a bulk supplier for this water district. At this stage, no, large water supplier would be off the table. It's also very possible that the water district itself, long-term, would possibly cost share in water treatment plant or develop their own water treatment plant. In the current stage, East Central, very engaged partner. They see the benefit of rural water. They think it will be a huge thing for Western Minnesota. They are committed to the project, but ultimately, like I said, they will not have enough water for this entire district long-term. Additional sources will have to be looked at, possibly, Crookston, Moorhead, Hawley, any large Barnesville, any large municipality. Nobody's off the table at this stage. As far as water guarantees go, typically what will happen between a bulk supplier and a bulk buyer, which West Central would be, from East Central, you would have contracts in place that lay out your terms, your cost structure, and you also put an allocation of gallons that you anticipate that you will use. So West Central would have a pretty large contract with East Central long-term. The more water you buy, the cheaper it ends up being. East Central, again, can only provide so much, but in the contract, if they state they can supply that, ultimately it ends on suppliers, so.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Is there a limit on the number of gallons they can buy? I mean,
That West Central can buy?
well, any town, Felton,
Oh.
Georgetown,
No, it's just essentially you want to look at what is needed most for your town. You don't want to, the more you end up having to buy, obviously the more costly it is for the city to get that line ran to them. And say the city of Felton is not going to need, as much water as Moorhead. So you would run a smaller line to them. If they say they wanted that much, okay, well then you have to pay for a larger line, and it becomes more cost prohibitive for those cities to do that. Now, say a city has a large commercial their industry coming to town, and they want to serve that industry, depending on how the partnership would look, they absolutely can look at buying more if the water's there for them to buy. So these are all kind of things that would, at the initial build out, be looked at in the PER, or preliminary engineering report.
I was just thinking, if a commercial development came into soybean plant or whatever, corn plant that came into Felton,
Yep.
could they dig their own well yet, or do they have to go on the?
Could they do their own well? They can, but the chances of them getting permitted, it's definitely a little bit tougher. That's why I've heard from a few large industries approaching this project, because they are having issues getting water permits and with enough water for what they need. So yes, you can drill your own well. It's just you don't have the guarantee of the stable water supply and contracted water supply. But with the development of a regional system, the look of large industries are actually hugely beneficial to the population base because there's such large layers of water. It helps keep the O&M down and rates down for the population across the district. So anytime that there is large industries that are interested in hooking up or being a part of the district, we always look and see what we can do to make it work for everybody, because it's good for the water district, it's good for the rest of the population, it's good for the cities, kind of beneficial for everybody, so.
I mean, initially, I would say, yes, we want to support this thing, but we haven't, is there any cost to the county? I guess what's it gonna cost us? Or is there no cost?
At this point, we're not asking the county for any money. I think what I wanted to try to communicate was that there is the likelihood, or at least the risk, that there will be some amount of the process, in terms of paying for the engineering fees and the judicial court process. The court could ask the counties to reimburse the court for some component of that process. And then for sure, if the court dismisses the proceedings and says, this thing doesn't make sense for the following reasons, then the costs would be assessed to the counties that initiated the proceedings. So there is the possibility that you will be on the hook for paying for part of this process. But it's really, it's not supposed to work that way. The district court is supposed to be the one paying for the process.
Well, as you say, they're supposed to. Okay. Yeah, hope
Well,
they do.
like I said, they haven't done it for a long time, and there could be some discussions with the district court about who's paying for what. But the way that the statute reads is the district court takes responsibility for the process.
I guess I'm still concerned about whether, what if it doesn't work out, so, go ahead, Dave.
Yes, just looking from a Clay County perspective, I see we've got Georgetown and Felton identified as being part of this project. What was the process where they came into this? Has there been a needs assessment? Is there an issue? Is this something that people there want? Or is this just seen as a possible extension of the project?
So many of these cities, what had happened is East Central or A2S was approached saying this city has issues, they're interested in this water district project. And then at that stage, we would go city to city, discuss their needs, see where they're at with their kind of infrastructure, and really let the city guide the discussion on, are they interested or not? It's, even, if you're in the district boundary, the city doesn't have to hook up. The current project as it sits is because these cities have shown interest to the project, not necessarily.
And each individual city, once the public system is established by the court, would have to adopt a resolution to join up.
And I think
So
we
at this
already-
point, that's not occurred. At this point, there's
Correct.
not been any formal action by Georgetown or Felton to participate in the project.
No, just.
I think
just
to clarify, there's 4 cities now based on the expansion, correct? You have Ullin and Hitterdall connected in as well.
Yep, yeah, correct. And they're within the project boundary. The reason there isn't a line to them, is just the project hasn't gotten to that stage and we don't want to get it, so big right away that all of a sudden this thing is, takes 10, 15 years to get off the ground because the cities that have approached us need help and need water now, so. Aaron, if you have anything to comment to that.
I guess in the city of Felton over the last year has been looking into our options. I mean, and we've been working with another engineering firm about drilling another well, putting an above ground 50,000 gallon holding tank and maybe a treatment facility. But as a small town, we don't have anybody on staff that can handle the treatment facility. I think Georgetown right now, they're contracted with,
Yeah, Georgetown's currently
Halstead.
contract with the city of Halstead.
they have a guy that comes down. I guess looking at it from our point of view is if this is an option to where the city doesn't have the maintenance costs and the fees and have to find somebody to handle the treatment plant, if this is gonna be an option for us, I mean, that would be a better direction for our town. Felton doesn't have a full-time maintenance person on staff or anything, so I guess for us, it would be a better option,
Mr. I just want to follow up on your questions too regarding the cost, and so during this process, is there, if there's challenges to the process, if there's people who want to legally fight this, and I think I speak from experience because we have had public projects that are, obviously there's litigation that goes into place, and that litigation can mount and mount and mount. And is all of that litigation then that could potentially happen also, could that also fall on the county to pay those litigation costs?
No, and the costs that you would be potentially on the hook for would be the costs associated with the judicial formation process. And typically the litigation that would be associated with a project like this is if a water district was attempting to assess a property owner that didn't want to participate in the district.
That's true.
Right. And so that would be a separate, issue after the project is up and running. So that wouldn't be a part of this formation process. And I think the intent of this water district would be to not even need to use that assessment authority, as Stephen laid out earlier, that this is really an opportunity to hook up if you want to hook up. And then you have to pay your fair share. So those fights would be not a part of this process, and it would not be something that the counties would be on the hook for if they do occur in the future.
Thank you.
And really just thinking about, just to kind of give you an idea of what the cost would be, and I'm being a lawyer and being careful because I don't know what the court will say or argue, and I don't want to promise something that I can't promise. But what the kind of cost that you're thinking about if the court were to dismiss the proceedings for some reason, which I don't think is likely, is the engineering report, the economic analysis, some of the court admin time potentially. So you're thinking about possibly, I would say, $200,000 of court costs and engineering costs, maybe more than that, if this were to be dismissed. And then the court could, in theory, under the statute, if they dismiss that, assess the cost to the counties that initiated the process.
So as a quick follow-up to that, I'm just going to ask, what would be the potential time frame for the court to do all this work so that, say, it did come back to Clay County on some expenses? When might something like that be happen? We'd be asked at that point. Are we talking a year,
So
2 years?
the court couldn't dismiss this until going through the full process and giving it the public hearing. So that's really the risk. And the court, to dismiss this, the court would either have to find that this project is not in the public interest, which is pretty, I think, a low risk given the facts on the table. And so for the court to dismiss it, would have to go through the whole process and get to the end. And I think that could easily take a year. So it wouldn't be for some time, and it could take longer. I mean, it really depends upon how fast court administration can move. But I think at minimum, it would be a year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see you got several senators and representatives signed on this thing. Is there a possibility they're looking for grants to help pay for?
Yes. We have, kind of as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, we have submitted for congressional direct spending from our federal legislatures. We have heard very good positive feedback. Same thing with our state representatives and senators. We are, in the current draft of the bonding bill, we have $8.1 million in there for immediate construction, which would include study and design, and another $64 million in future potential build out for rural customers of phase one. Also, in our congressional direct spending applications, we'll probably have an additional 20 million in there that can be allocated to this project pool as sees fit, which could include, some engineering, legal, design fees. Once the district is formed, that's why it's been a little bit of a challenge is.
And Stephen, just to be clear, the district is legally formed, right? So we
Yeah.
can apply for state and federal money under the existing district that Norman and Polk County has formed. And so we have a legal entity. We can go after that state and federal money. And then the next process is the court actually setting up the public system. Sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
Yep, no problem. So before, that had kind of happened, how this was approached from a funding perspective is we are looking at, the cities of Halstead to sponsor, the entire project. Looking at individual cities like Climax that did their own funding package. Cities like Neelsville, they're looking at their own funding package. And it's instead of, having the one district that was applying for all the funding previously, it was all these different entities trying to kind of essentially piecemeal it together just to get any sort of funding to move the project forward. And the challenge with that, with many of these small cities is it's hard to go and ask every small city to say, can you put up 25, 30,000 for a preliminary engineering report based upon a project that was conceptual at that time. That's a lot of money for these small cities to put out with no guarantees. So that's why it's been kind of approached the way that it's been approached to try to have as little cost share in the locals until we can figure out, what type of funding sources we can actually get. So we will continue to apply for more funding as it comes up. Without the board in place, it's, what direction do you go with it is kind of another thing, so. And then I guess on top of that, you know, there hasn't been the funding for, you know, the project team other than, Flaherty had received some money up front to do this, so.
All of a sudden, those big numbers that you brought out there scared me a little bit. Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, maybe if I could here to move this along, I know we just received this resolution today. I'd like to have our attorney look at it a little bit more, as well as our administrator. And I do want to maybe have a little bit further discussion about the risk on this thing from our standpoint. And I say that because there's a significant part of our county, regardless, even if we establish the whole county basis, for there are certain parts of the county who would not benefit from this project. And we also have to keep in mind that we don't really have a way right now of establishing our own special assessment district as a county. We haven't done that. And so whatever financial responsibility lies on the county, it goes to everybody in the county to pay for it, including the people who would not benefit. So I just want to make sure, from my standpoint, there's a certain part of this that makes sense. Even if it didn't go, it might be worth the investment to see. I think overall this is going to be good for those that need it. Felton and Hewlin hit it all in those areas, but I just am curious. I'm cautious about our risk, and that's where I'd like to get some feedback from our attorneys and our administrator on this.
Well, I fully support this, and I
Yeah.
think they need it, because
Right.
I know a couple of years ago, I was up at Felton for a meeting in water, and they need it.
I know what it is to need water. I experienced it myself.
So it's just something that they need, but I think we have to make sure that it's not just a matter of signing the form saying, hey, we support this, and I just would, when you start talking, I think a number 64 million came up there a while ago, and it sort of scares me a little bit, who's paying all that money, and it's just, and I know.
Yeah, and to be clear, the 64 million, the 6.4 million is the amount of bonding that the district would get. So that's not money that the county would be responsible for, a part of this project. But I can certainly follow up with the county administrator and the county attorney to provide a more detailed, specific analysis about what the potential risk for costs for the county could be, if that's helpful.
Well, I think that's probably something we can look forward to doing, but, I think we should bring it up almost right away next week again, and then,
Well,
like I say, I fully support the thing, and
Mr. Chair, I agree with you too, and I do too. I think these types of things can be really good. I just, I think sometimes the devil is in the details, I guess, and I just want to make sure that there's no little devil out there that's going to cost everybody additional funds, so.
okay. So we table this, or we just,
I think, Mr. Chair, this was just the intent today was
Oh.
informational, and talk with Mr. Slick. The idea would be as if the board had interest, and it sounds like there's some additional questions and there is interest, that we would bring a resolution at a later day. And it sounds like maybe we'll get in contact with Mr. Marks here at a time that maybe we can meet here before the next board meeting. And if we can get the information to you by next board meeting for that decision, we'll do that. But otherwise, we hope to do that as quickly as possible.
okay, sounds like a plan, okay. But I know, Aaron, as far as Felton and stuff, we fully support you, and we just need to make sure that we're signing this. I realize Norman and Polk have signed it already, and evidently it is a good resolution or whatever, and we just want to look it over. Okay, anything else?
Nope, that should be it. Thank you for your time, and look forward to speaking with the commission more further on this project, so.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, very interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Rocky, you didn't
Thank
have
you for
any
your
words of
time.
wisdom for us today?
all heard me speaking up.
Okay, with that, we go and, is Rhonda next here? Request approval to replace 2 county agency social worker positions in child protection, child welfare services due to resignations.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Good morning, Rhonda.
Water districts to child protection. Everything in between. Okay, we are here today. I am with Michelle and Amy and Quinn. The first item we have is request approval to replace 2 child protection workers that have resigned. And I believe this morning, we added the resignation I received yesterday for our child protection for a
Yeah,
third position.
We got
Okay.
that agenda addition, and we'll handle that too right away.
Okay, thank you. So they all kind of go hand in hand, but yes, we had 2 resignations. 2 of them are in Michelle's unit, 1 is in Amy's unit, and I can let them talk a little bit about the work of those positions. But bottom line is we're requesting approval to fill those positions with backfill should we have internal interest. So Michelle, do you just want to talk about your 2?
Sure. The 2 positions that I have open, one is a child protection specialist where they do case management with open cases that have been transferred to us. The other case is kind of a specialized caseload where they work with more of our children's mental health voluntary placements. And we're looking to continue that as it is. We have 2 positions like that, and this one is open, so.
You say cases that have been forwarded to you, where'd they come from? Or-
From our
Way to
assessment
go,
unit.
Okay, all right.
And I currently have 1 open position for child protection ongoing case management.
And these positions do generate some revenue based on the work that they do, the eligibility of the family, and caseload size. So just to give you an example, I didn't have a chance to pull the 3rd position, but one of the positions on an annual basis brought in about $52,000, the other one about $54,000. So it's about average for those positions to help pay for the cost.
Okay.
I don't have a question, I'd make a motion, though.
Okay, go for it.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the replacement of the 2 social worker positions with Child Protection Welfare Services Division and the approval to backfill should there be internal interest.
I'll second that with a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It seems to me that this is one area where we just are constantly seeing rotation. Is the rotation that we're seeing, is it those that are early, new hires, or are they the ones that have a tendency to not stay around as long, or is it just the longer that you're just dealing with that, I can imagine the emotions and all that stuff that goes with that job has got to be difficult. Would you care to?
Sure, I think, with these 3 resignations, it's kind of all over the board. Actually, the 3 are more of our senior workers. A couple of them moved on to new opportunities, and another one went to another county to do child protection. So, I think we do see some burnout, but also looking for other opportunities. And maybe that is related to the work at times, but.
I think we have seen a lot of stability, though, with our staff recently due to us being able to keep caseload sizes lower. So that has kept. My current open position is going back to pursue her master's, and another one is transferring to another county because of location. So it is hopeful to hear that we're not having it be more of a stressful, not that it isn't stressful, but.
One of the positions, and this is all a matter of perspective when we think about longevity, because really all 3 of these staff, I think, the one that's been here the longest, let's see, Cassie, has it been 4 years? 4, and the other one 1.5 years, and the other one a similar amount of time. But one of them is moving on to be, I believe, a school social worker in West Fargo. And I think overall had kind of indicated child protection may not be the long-term position for her. Another one is moving to Becker County, actually lives closer to Becker County, but really did share with us that it was a difficult decision, but a little bit closer to her home, but also pay was a factor in that decision as well. I think she's still going to be doing child protection work. So unfortunately, we're seeing a little bit of that as well.
Well, that was going to the heart of my question. And it had to be, your cost impact that you talk on here. You said that they're budgeted at grade 18, step 5 and 4 respectively, and we're looking at bringing somebody in at step 1. And does that, is that something that puts us at risk for keeping them right there? I mean, if we want to look at longevity, and if pay on step 5 and 4 and they're not satisfied there, and they're leaving, how good is step 1?
Yeah, step 1, and then they get that second bump 6 months
Yeah,
later,
right.
and they're on. And for some, we've been able to recruit at some of that step 1, but it just depends. Now, in this employee's situation, of course, proximity is important, and if she can travel less and be paid more and do the same work, that kind of fit. We have recruited, honestly, several employees from Cass County. And our pay grid has been enough to recruit them and have them accept positions. But, again, neighboring counties and what they're paying is important because people are mobile and, looking at Becker, Otter Tail, even Cass County are important to kind of gauge where we're at for those positions.
Thank you.
Thoughts? Would you have any other thoughts on that?
Okay, any other questions? Okay, at this time, we just got a motion for the 2 positions that we're gonna, I've just included the 2 positions so far. Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now to the place of social or child protection.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that added agenda item was a result of a resignation we received yesterday, and that was the employee I spoke about that's going to be relocating to Becker County. So again, it's in the same service area, child protection, child welfare, case management. We would again ask permission to fill that with any backfill should that occur.
So move.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. You have the next item too, or are we secure program case manager?
Would you like to move on to the department update?
Okay,
Is that what we're doing, or were you thinking of a break?
I think I've just missed a line, sorry. Let's do the apartment update. Sorry.
All right. Let's see. We are starting. I'll join. Okay, so department update. As you may recall, last year, I just came before you and did a fairly high level overview of our whole department. Every couple of years, I like to make sure all of our supervisors get a chance to come before you and talk directly with you about what's happening in their unit. So that is what we're doing this year. And then, so we're spreading it out over 3 board meetings so that we don't take the day to do all of that. So what we have today is our behavioral health unit, which includes mental health, substance use, adult protection services, and chemical health. And so Kirsten Lepard is going to be presenting on that. And then after that, we have our child protection, child welfare division. So Amy and Michelle and Quinn will talk talk with you a bit about that. We do have a PowerPoint that went out in your packet, and the first slide 3 and 4 there was really just our organizational chart. I wanted to give you an organizational chart that that has all of our names on it, so that you can see the 136 staff that represent our agency. Many of the names will be familiar to you, and you can see what divisions and what caseloads that they work in. So won't go into that in detail. But setting the stage then, I will turn it over to Kirsten.
Good, thank you. Good morning. I will talk fast since I know your board meeting is running behind. So the biggest change that we have seen in our unit over the last year, or actually the last 9 months, is we have added 3 new workers, 1 in each area. They have brought a different perspective, and all 3 have been a great addition to our unit so far. So I'm looking forward to the next year ahead to see how that works as well. So just going through the PowerPoint, we'll start with adult mental health. I have 5 staff, 1 who does targeted case management for individuals that have a serious and persistent mental illness. My other 4 staff do civil commitments. So mental health civil commitments, mental health chemical dependency civil commitments, and also mental health and DD commitments. So those numbers have remained pretty steady over the last 4 years. One note, last year, out of all of the screenings that we did, 26 of those were specific to Rule 20 cases. And those are the cases that start in the criminal court, and the individual is deemed not competent to proceed in the criminal court. And so that is then moved over to the civil division, and we look at civil commitment for those individuals. So 26, to me, honestly, is a pretty significant number. Those cases bring in different barriers that staff have to meet head-on, and that is more time-consuming. So, in case you're wondering, adding that 4th staff, are they sitting around, are they bored? Absolutely not. The cases that we're seeing, whether they're Rule 20 cases or just straight-up MICD commitments, they are very complex. My staff are doing things that when I was doing case management just 4.5 years ago, I did not do. So they are determining if a person is even a U.S. citizen. They are determining if the name that they have given to individuals is even their actual legal name. So I call it detective work. I'm sure our detectives would not appreciate that, but that's really what they're doing, and it's outside of the scope of social work, but it's what we need to do to provide the best service that we can for our individuals under commitment. My staff also monitor individuals that are in the sex offender program, and I want to say we have about 10 of those right now, individuals that are hospitalized in St. Peter in the state facility. So just some of the partnerships, committees that my staff and I work with. We work very closely with our Adult Mental Health Initiative. You may have heard of that. We call it VCOW lovingly. It's Becker Clay Ottertail Wilkin Adult Mental Health Initiative. We work very closely with our jail and correction personnel. We work very closely with housing committees within our region and within the CARES Governance Board also works with the state of North Dakota. And then our local advisory council, which Commissioner Krabanoff has started to attend and is asking all the right questions and learning as he goes. So that's our adult mental health overview. Our chemical health, our terminology has changed, and so you are going to hear substance use disorder. I still refer to at times as chemical dependency and chemical health, sometimes substance use. It all means the same thing. So I have 4 full-time staff and then a case aide as well. 2 of the staff are licensed alcohol and drug counselors who complete comprehensive assessments for individuals in Clay County. And then the other 2 staff provide treatment coordination, which is case management, and they also participate in drug court and in veterans court. And they also do civil commitments for those with chemical dependency issues. So our numbers have gone down over the last 4 years in the number of comprehensive assessments that we have completed. Part of that is because the number of assessors that we have decreased, but also with direct access, which the state of Minnesota fully implemented last July. The hope is that individuals do not have to come to the county for assessments like they used to have to. And they can go to any provider, have a comprehensive assessment completed with the hopes of them getting into treatment quicker. That's the hope. I think we have seen that to some extent. So, and the other thing that we have started to do since last July is we can bill for treatment coordination. That's something that our unit has not been able to do before. There has not been a lot of direction from the state of Minnesota on what that looks like. So we're going into that cautiously. But I have 3 staff that are providing treatment coordination and are billing for that as well.
And maybe just to add a piece in this area, so in regards to the numbers, so we had 4, correct me if I get this wrong, but we had 4 social workers doing what used to be called Rule 25 assessments. That changed, that now we're doing what's called comprehensive assessments. And in order to do a comprehensive assessment, you have to be an LADC, a licensed addiction counselor. And so we went from 4 staff doing those to 2, so we have 2 LADCs. And the other 2 are doing the new treatment coordination piece. So just to give a little bit more clarification on that.
So yes, I noted that my staff participates in our drug court and our veterans court. They're very active in that. We are in the early stages of discussing a possible DWI court in Clay County, so that's exciting. We work very closely with our detox. So moving forward with the new detox building will be exciting as well. And then moving into adult protection, the 2 staff that I have doing adult protection right now, one has been in the position for 1.5 years, and the other one has been about 4 months. So they're relatively new. The 3 of us are learning as we go. Last year, the state of Minnesota has changed some language within our Vulnerable Adult Act as well. So we are moving statewide from being a reactive system to being a proactive system. So that is a huge change for us. It's a positive change, but it's a lot at times to change our mindset on how that will work and how that will benefit our citizens of Clay County. So the number of reports that we receive, our vulnerable adult reports, has steadily increased over the last 4 years. But the number of investigations that we complete have pretty much remained even. And that's because with the language change and the statute changing, it allows our staff to do more on the intake phase and not starting that investigation right away. So that's why those numbers look a little different. But the number of reports that we receive have increased. So this used to be a 1.5 person position, and now it's 2 full-time positions, and they are busy. So just some of the trends that we're seeing, some of the barriers that we see. for both our mental health and our substance use unit, when we're looking at civil commitment, there continues to be a bed shortage in the state of Minnesota. That's not going to change. It's a huge barrier, and we are needing to try innovative ways of serving clients, and what does that look like? We're continuing those conversations. There continues to be a shortage of community providers. I often say that we can't get a person into the state-operated system when they need it, and then when they're there, we can't get them out back into the community because of shortage of placements and staff to work at those placement options. I talked about the complexity of the population that we serve. Our cases are very complex, and that is time-consuming, and my staff, they do a great job, but it's stressful and it's overwhelming, and again, with the barriers that we're seeing, it makes it difficult some days to provide the best service that we can to our
Excuse me, you said yes, difficult in getting them placed in the community. So what do you do with them in the meantime? Or what, you have to house them, or what?
Oftentimes, they stay in the hospital, and then that's when we come to the board and we talk about our high hospital costs, and it's an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Our substance use disorder reform and direct access has been a positive for our clients, but again, it's new to us, and we're constantly learning what that looks like. And then just, again, moving from a reactive to a proactive adult protection system is positive, but we have some things to learn yet in how that's going to look.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. I had a meeting with Lakeland this last week and discussed the Rule 20 and 25 assessments, kind of asking them how they're mitigating that. And this is challenging. As you know, it sounds like it's going to become a lot more challenging based on staffing issues. Do you obviously have vendors that you're working through? How can we advocate? What can we advocate for to help with that? Because I know that's a growing need with those assessments.
For our chemical health assessments?
Well, I kind of asked a two-prong, sorry. So I don't, if you ever put Rule 20s and Rule 25s in a box, in terms of getting those for your clients, how can we advocate for better streamlining of those services?
That's a very good question.
Open box.
You know, maybe I wouldn't mind, I'll just jump in and maybe help Kristen a little bit on the Rule 20 side. You know, that's something, and when I talked in my update, you know, what we're seeing from courts, I mean, we're just recognizing better mental health issues. And I think if Carrie was here from the jail, she'd be saying that because we don't have enough institutions, enough mental health placements, the jail is becoming one of the main places where people are, if you will, being dumped, or what's happening because there isn't enough treatment. They're ended up committing a crime. That crime is really largely based on their mental health issue. Although they're charged, ultimately they're recognized that they can't proceed, they can't help with their defense. Their whole mental health process was the reason they committed the crime, so they're not going to ultimately be held accountable, you know, if they committed that assault, but they don't even recognize what they did. That's why a Rule 20 happens. And so if you look even 3 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, we might have 1 or 2 in a year, and now we have 26 to 30 per year. And that's, I would expect fully to escalate and continue. The other issue is, though, so there's a requirement under the law when a person is found to be Rule 20 and is in the jail, they are required to be out of the jail within 48 hours. So 3 years ago, we would have had those individuals, and we would be on that 47th hour fighting to make sure that person is out of there. Today, we're somewhere between 30 to 60 days. They don't have enough beds to keep up with those individuals and get them out it's not even close to a 48-hour rule anymore. It's a 30-day rule. And so those are things that Kirsten's team is constantly working on with me and my office. So that's that Rule 20 piece. That's different than the Rule 25 that I'll let her talk about. But Rule 20 is very complicated, and it's increasing. So it increases costs, it increases problems, it increases the work level they're doing every day. We are churning on that a lot, right? And so right now, there's even lawsuits. I expect that Department of Human Services is being sued. There's been several counties that want to sue them or other defense attorneys because people are not getting out of the jails in an appropriate amount of time. It's pretty complicated.
Right,
So I think advocating for more services and for DHS to be getting more departments or having mental health facilities built, but it's money. I think the legislature has to dedicate that kind of money to it. And you're already behind the 8 ball. I mean, if you saw what Fargo was saying the other day, they were putting it into absolute crisis mode and was saying we have to be doing everything a year ago. We're years behind. So I would just say strong advocacy towards building mental health facilities that are reasonable to help people. That will help in the Rule 20 era. That's something different than Rule 20.
I guess maybe I should have clarified better. My question particularly was getting those assessments done. And to your point, and from Lakeland's perspective as well, having that practitioner in the jail has been very beneficial to make sure those Rule 20 assessments are getting done there. But knowing that it's been challenging them to staff the individuals that even can complete it, which, again, it's a broken system and there's so many facets of it, is there another vendor that can do those for you, or is that challenging in itself?
So the Rule 20 assessments is that what you're referring to?
The Rule 25.
Or the comprehensive assessments?
Right. Don't you need a mental health practitioner to be part of that process? Or not? Okay, then never mind.
Although Lakeland, Lakeland does provide substance use treatment services, and they provide that in Ottertail County. And so the Rule 25s are now called comprehensive assessments. Yeah, that can be a staffing issue because they do have to have the right credentials.
Well, then that makes sense
Yes.
because it came from an Ottertail County
Yes.
commissioner. So if it's different there, that's part of
Yep.
where my confusion, I apologize.
Yeah.
So our Lakeland in Moorhead does not provide comprehensive assessments of the substance use disorders.
Would that be helpful?
Well, we do have
We do have a number of providers in Clay County, and those providers all have scheduled comprehensive assessments as well as walk-in days.
Okay.
And I can just compare it to previous years at the county when in doing assessments. There were times that our assessors were booking out 5-6 weeks. And now it's typically within the same week or into the next week. So I think comprehensive assessments for substance use are getting completed in a reasonable amount of time here in Clay County.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe I would add in regards to what Brian was saying in terms of the bed issues for mental health, those Rule 20 folks sitting in the jails. We, a couple months ago, connected with various community mental health providers about submitting an application to the Department of Human Services for the development of what they call an IRTS facility, Intensive Residential Treatment Services for Adults. The goal of the RFP that came out by DHS was to address that very issue, those folks sitting in jails beyond that 48-hour rule, folks that are stuck in hospitals waiting for a community residential bed. So we did get a community provider willing to submit that application. There was some confusion on the part of DHS. They pulled the application. Now it's reopened, and our provider will resubmit their application as well. But they are looking to develop a 9-bed IRTS facility that would be locked that would serve some of the folks that we're talking about. So I'm very hopeful that they are awarded that grant. They asked for over $1 million in terms of the development of the site, and so more to come on that, but we're really hopeful. We received letters of support from the jail and county attorneys and multiple counties in our region because it would be a regional resource if developed, so.
Ron, to follow up on that, so having no clue of the actual number, is 9 a good number? I mean, does that take pressure off the short term?
Well,
Quite a
it
bit,
will,
or-
it will certainly serve a select population, but no, it will not solve our issue. We have tremendous needs otherwise, but because this facility is really intended for those folks in that correctional
That
side
Rule
of things
20.
that are sitting in jail or
Yeah.
hospitals. So I think they proposed a 9-bed in terms of some of the requirements of what they would need for staffing and understanding the complexity of the population they would be serving. We wouldn't want to go over 16 beds because that does interfere with how we can bill for the service. So, 9 beds certainly is not going to address the full spectrum of our issue, but it will certainly help. Okay, and if we don't have any more questions, we'll move on to our Child and Family Services.
Yes, our Children and Family Services Division. So we have 33 staff in our division. Quinn, Amy, and I supervise them. So we have 2 intake workers and 8 assessors that are on Quinn's team. Between Amy and I, we supervise 14 case managers. We also have 5 case aides and a variable hour case aide that work with us. So we have a big team. The service that we're tasked with providing is really taking in those reports of abuse and neglect. You know, the reports might be sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, truancy. There's a slew, Quinn could go on, but so once we receive those reports, they're screened. And if they're screened, we open it for an investigation or assessment. That's Quinn's team will go out. They have 45 days to complete that assessment. If they determine that services are needed for the family, they'll refer it to our case management team. And then our case management team will then take over and work on a case plan with the family, develop goals for them. Some of these cases might be voluntary and some might be court-ordered. It just really all depends on the risk and the safety concerns. Some of these cases, our families remain together in their home, and other times the children have to be removed due to safety concerns. Really, the goal of our work is to keep families together, and we really work hard at reducing barriers and trying to find access to services for families that need it. Another thing that we do is so I work with our contracted mental health services providers. So Lakeland Solutions and Access of the Red River Valley, we contract with to do our Rule 79 children's mental health case management. And so I meet with those providers monthly and discuss any contract issues or assign cases and kind of go through that. The other thing that we all 3 do is we manage a lot of services with our contracted providers. Without those contracted providers, the services that our families, they just play such an integral role with the families that we serve. Rainbow Bridge provides supervised visitation for families for out-of-home placement cases. The Village, LSS, Lakeland all provide, in-home family services for some of these cases. And so we spend a lot of time building those relationships and making sure everything's running okay.
And I'll speak to a little bit of the data here. I won't just read numbers to you because that's kind of boring, but I can speak to trends. Obviously, you can see a decrease there, which at first glance gets me kind of excited. Is that less abuse and less maltreatment that's occurring in our community? I unfortunately think the answer is no. A huge decrease in those numbers were obviously COVID. The schools are our second largest reporting source, and so when kids weren't physically going to school, you're knocking out a huge chunk of teachers, school social workers, counselors, principals that were hearing kids say this is what's going on at home. So when you remove that ability, you really remove kind of some of the eyes and ears that the community has on these kiddos. So we saw a huge decrease, at least from my perspective, that's pretty darn big. in just the amount of reports that we would get, again, with the schools being our number 2 reporting source. As a result of that, I think everything else, as you move along into like the assignments of assessments and investigations, it kind of parallels with that. One of the things that I found interesting was when I compare the decrease in caseload size to the total placement costs, which Amy's going to speak to in a minute, it didn't dip as much as I would like. And that goes along with kind of my anecdotal experience that although numerically there were less cases that were being opened, the severity of what we were seeing remained the same. So the truly bad things that really warranted those out-of-home placements did not decrease with COVID. They stayed relatively consistent, which is unfortunate. Along with that, though, it also tells me that the things that we need to know about the most were still getting to us. Our law enforcement partners, our other sources of mandated reporters, they were reporting things to us that were absolutely appropriate. One of the things that we saw with school, there might have been assessments that we had opened in the past where we just had very limited information and kind of opened in a let's go check it out, or just in case, let's go make sure kids are safe. If those reports were coming from the school that were just limited in nature and we weren't getting those reports, obviously we don't have those just check it out assessments that maybe weren't necessary upon the conclusion of our 45 days. So what this tells me is that our screening process has remained pretty accurate when I look at the out-of-home placement costs that come along with that.
So turning to the out-of-home placement and costs, you will see that we did have less children in placement. However, our costs remained high. This again is kind of goes back to a little bit about what Kirsten and Brian were saying is we're placing kids in higher placement costs, also in facilities where they really shouldn't be. We have a huge number of kiddos who have significant mental health needs and behaviors, and they're placed at the juvenile center, where they really shouldn't be in the juvenile center. They should be in a treatment facility where beds aren't open, or they should be in another placement that would maybe be funded under CADI services or DD services, or might have a different funding stream, but we can't get them into those placements because of providers and no openings or beds available. We also saw an increase in just placement costs. Daycare costs are higher, so we have a lot of foster families who have to utilize daycare, so we're paying daycare costs along with increased amounts of placements for funding just for foster care.
Maybe could I just add a couple comments on the placement pieces too? You know, one of the things with West Central, as you know, they've with their expansion. So these costs do not represent secure detention. So they are the non-secure side of West Central, along with all of our other, foster homes and that. So the secure side is a separate budget. But one of the things we've been very impressed with is the various programming that West Central has developed over time as they have seen the types of needs that our kids have in their facility. They are doing stabilization services, which is one-on-one services for some of our kiddos, all the way down to the CLIPS program where it's more independent living skills-based. So when we came before the board years ago, when our administrator Larson was proposing the expansion of the facility, we said our goal was to try to keep our kids in our community, keep them closer to home within their school districts, close so parents can be a part of their planning, reduce travel time for our social workers on the road. I think we are really seeing that the kids that we might have placed otherwise are staying at West Central. And while we might feel that, is it the absolute best because of the physical setup or the feeling of it being more institutional versus perhaps a home-like setting? I mean, there are some trade-offs to that for sure. But we are definitely seeing some of our kiddos that have struggled in various placements do really, really well at West Central. So we're really lucky to have that resource for our kids and our kids that really do need that variety of service. So, so I wanted to add that.
Moving moving on to the next slide, as of March 20th, 2023, we had 108 children in out-of-home placement. And this just kind of breaks down where those kids are placed. You'll see that we have 3 children on a trial home visit, meaning the county retains legal custody while the children are at home with their parents working on reunification. We have 2 in a correctional facility, which would be like a Northwest Juvenile Center, and these placements include probation placements as well, just to clarify that. We have 40 children that are in non-relative foster care, 16 who are with licensed relatives, 3 children in corporate foster care, your facilities like Solutions or Access of the Red River Valley, 1 child in a group home, 10 in non-secure, so over at the juvenile center in the non-secure portion, 12 children in a pre-adoptive home with a non-relative, meaning there's been a termination of parental rights and those children are awaiting adoption. 2 children who are in pre-adoptive with a relative, so meaning there is a relative that's been identified and they're going to be a permanency option. 6 children in a pre-kinship home, meaning they're placed with a relative and they're working on a transfer of permanent physical and legal custody to that relative. 5 children in residential treatment. 8 youth that are in extended foster care, meaning they might be living independently or going to college. Those are our kids 18 to 21 years of age. So that's just a breakdown of where those 108 youth are in out-of-home placement.
Excuse me, on those pre-adoptive home relative and pre-kingship, what's the holdup and all that stuff? Is it?
We're just either, we've got the court order now and we're moving forward on completing all of the adoption paperwork, waiting for a court hearing. And with the addition of our staff, we're really moving those along quickly. We're also working with the county attorney's office on a new procedure to help work on filing adoption petitions. So we are seeing that we are really moving along quickly on those, but there is a period of time where things have to be approved by the Department of Human Services, and we have to make sure all of the paperwork's in order to finalize.
Thank you.
And maybe I would add, just for some perspective of that 108, so again, that's a snapshot in time, 108 kids, a day in March. We have seen that daily number as high as 177 and as low as about 75. So you can kind of see the range there a bit. Our 177 were when we had some pretty significant high placement numbers, and it wasn't not all that long ago we were down to about 75, but we continue to work on that area. So daycare cuts, we were not going to do that, right? Okay, there we go.
So as far as community partners and committees, we do have a number of staff that sit on committees with some of our community partners. They're listed out there. A couple that I do want to mention, though, is the Parent Support Outreach Program. We contract with the village for that. That's really a preventative child protection service. It comes from our intake. We'll screen out child protection reports, and the point of that is really to prevent that family from entering into our system. But we do, we kind of cater some of these committees to people's interests, and so they get to sit on these committees and build those relationships. And I think it can be really fulfilling for them at times when they can be involved with something outside of just that case management work and get to do some other work, so.
I'll just speak to a few of our current challenges. Obviously, as you guys heard, staff turnover continues to be an issue. All the things that were talked about before, I mean, I don't want to take it to a too emotionally tense situation, but that's exactly what happens. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, Commissioner Campbell, you brought up pay. Are we staying competitive? I certainly would like to think so. That being the case, I don't know how much dollars and cents you can get paid if kids on your caseload die. And unfortunately, it happens. And obviously, the staff didn't do that. They didn't commit any acts that resulted in that, but they certainly feel responsible. And when you have to have kind of that stress and that anxiety of having that be a reality of something that's on your caseload, I mean, these are kids that you meet, you speak to, you get to know, you build relationships with, and when bad things continue to happen to them, and you feel like you're powerless to stop it from happening, that takes its toll over time. I think that that definitely speaks to some facets of the turnover. I think it's just a really complex issue. In 2022, we had 6 full-time staff that left or moved to other divisions within social services, so retained good employees, just they moved to different departments.
In terms of, or one challenge we're also seeing is our relative care performance improvement plan. So the state really looks at us trying to place children with relatives, aunts and uncles, grandma and grandpas. One of our major barriers with this is the North Dakota border. We can't just place kids with relatives over in Fargo. We have to go through the interstate compact process, which can be very timely, and we can't get those kids placed with family as soon as we'd like. Another barrier we face is when those relatives don't live here in Clay County. Say there's a grandma in Minneapolis who has siblings and is willing to take this child for placement. Well, we're still under the court's supervision to make sure visits are happening, and so then it may not be in the best interest to place those kids so far away from the parents when we're working on reunification. So it has been a barrier that we continue to struggle with.
So just kind of piggybacking, you guys have heard this from Kirsten earlier, but same with the children. We're having, it's just a real struggle finding residential treatment facilities for children who need it. A lot of these kids do end up waiting at West Central just to be able to stay safe. And then we're looking at 6-9 month wait list to get them in once they meet that level of care. And then, so that is a continued issue. We are seeing a shortage of foster home and daycare availability as well. We're really struggling to find foster parents who need daycare to find a daycare opening for those kids. We've really tried to strategize around that to see how we can help support, and I think one of those things is paying for those daycare costs. And specifically for older teens and youth, it is really hard to find a foster care home that is willing to take a teenager. They have complex needs sometimes. Maybe it's the fear of the unknown, I don't know, but we see a lot of those kids end up over at the juvenile center too for longer term than maybe what we would like to see.
Don't want to keep it all doom and gloom. We'll talk about some good things that we've done too. So some current successes, on that note of turnover, us as a management team, we really looked hard at what can we do to make this better. So we conducted a kind of an anonymous staff satisfaction survey in 2022 and got a lot of really good feedback directly from the staff. What are the things that you like? What are the things that keep you here? What are the things that could potentially make you leave? So we're implementing some changes based on that survey that we hope will improve how they feel about working here at Clay County. With that, with the 6 full-time staff that had left in 2022, turns out half of those were in my unit. I don't want to say I've become desensitized to turnover, but at the same time, I'm very excited about the staff that I was able to bring on. Some of them are from Cass County, some of them are very, very skilled. Not as much of your brand-new college grads as we've seen in the past, and I'm very, very hopeful. I really like the direction that the assessment unit's headed in with the staff that we have. We have some very competent staff and still retain some of those veteran staff within the unit.
In terms of permanency, in 2022, we finalized 28 adoptions of kids in Clay County, and we had 3 transfer of permanent physical and legal custody to relatives. So 31 kids reached permanency in 2022. So those were kind of those numbers that you were seeing that are kind of pending before. We also have improved our coordination with the county attorney's office. I know Brian's had some new staff. We constantly have new staff, so we've done some collaboration of training where during COVID, everything was held by Zoom. So we actually coordinated and did some courtroom training because some of our staff said, I don't know where to sit when I go to court. And we're like, that's a problem. We need to get a training going. And we also have done a lot more consultation and collaboration, and we're working on a new procedure to finalize adoptions too.
So with that, with the board support, we've really been able to build up our staff, and by doing so, we've really been able to reduce our caseload sizes, and that has really helped a lot. I think that we have some really great staff, and they work really hard to stay on top of their cases, and they really want to do right by the people that they work with. So I couldn't be happier with the group that we have right now. And, you know, they do really hard work. They're on call. You know, we didn't mention this earlier, but our staff is on call throughout the year. They have to be on call for 24 hours a day for a week at a time. That takes a toll. And, you know, they come into work with a good attitude and they're ready to collaborate and do what they need. And it's been really great. So kudos to them. And they're the ones doing the hard work, so.
Well, most situations, good staff is because of good supervision, so thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Any additional things you have, or?
Mr. Chair, I might. Thank you for the report, guys, but most importantly, thank you for the work. All of our staff do tremendous work every day, but you and your staff really work with people and real individuals and situations that are heartbreaking. So thank you for all the work that you do, all the work that they do. And it's hard to get excited about some of these things, but it is exciting to see how the numbers have really gone down in out-of-home placement. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can get it together. But several years ago, those numbers were really high. And we do the best that we can to mitigate the issues, and I guess the trends look promising. I know there are challenges, and hopeful that we can continue to help ease what those challenges are and recruit amazing foster families and adoptive families and help fund programs that can give families the supports they need to be better and to work towards reunification, because that does happen. So it's not going to wrap, I'm sorry, I can't get it together, so I'm going to wrap it up. But just please let your staff know that we're appreciative of their work.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. McDonald. We got to fill an upcoming vacancy in the secure program.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Yeah, I got an upcoming vacancy coming. Its last day is going to be May 26th. One of our case managers in our secure unit. Good guy, cares about the program, cares about the kids. He gave us notice well in advance. I'm not looking for any sort of overlap, but I'm just looking for permission to post and hire that position and get some backfill. In the event that that candidate's internal, then we can just take care of stuff internally. So he can take over she can take over the caseload.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. McDonald?
No questions, but I'll move that we authorize filling this position with a backfill.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, your honor.
Mr. Chair, I might just, since James is here, want to point out, I was going to report on it on my PIC committee report, but James did come to the PIC committee to share that there was some additional funds within our non-secure grant that will free up approximately $270,000. Is that correct?
Total amount.
Okay, total amount, and what we'll be able to do is use that state grant to help pay for some overtime with exempt employees for training opportunities, again, to help pay staff for some of the huge issues that you deal with over there as well, so.
Yep, good work. Thank you, Jim. Okay, with that, we'll take a short break. Next thing is the approval to replace the public health nurse, Kathy. Oh, it's been a while, Kathy, isn't it? At least a week or two.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Aren't you happy to see me? This will only be about a 25-minute request, so hang in there. Actually, I'm requesting.
Is there anything else you needed?
Nope, that was it for today.
We took care of that.
Did I start over?
Oh, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
This will be 2 minutes. I'm requesting replacement of a public health nurse who has resigned. She's been here since May of 21, and just moving on for personal reasons. So it's a full-time position. It's in the budget, obviously, and so requesting just to fill that. I don't think there won't be a backfill because all the RNs are in positions of this, in these program areas. So we'll need to advertise externally for this one. It is a challenge to recruit RNs. We're finding it really challenging in our family home visiting program. We have ads out there and just are not getting anyone. So we knew it was going to be difficult to recruit RNs. It continues to be difficult. So hopefully we'll have some applicants on this one.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to replace the nurse. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Well, it was nice seeing you.
Thank you. Great to see all of you.
Stop by again sometime. Okay, next thing, we approve the waive penalties on property tax. Is she
Hey, this is
online
Annette.
or? Michelle?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
We received a request from Orion Jacobson. His father passed away, and when he was going through the paperwork, he saw that the taxes weren't paid. So he was requesting the waiver of the penalties.
I take it, according to this, he's already paid the regular taxes.
Yes, we have received a check for the taxes themselves.
So it's just the penalty we're trying to get reduced.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to waive the penalties on parcels 60.200.0080 in the amount of $327.08. And just to probably just make a note that this is, falls in line with our typical policy for these issues.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next thing, we request approval to join Landfill Coalition PFAS test study.
Good morning.
Or you can tell us what that's all about.
As we've talked in the past, PFAS, it's not going to go away. PFAS is essentially a chemical that's in everything. The MPCA is going to start testing for it, or demand testing. And I'm here today to request approval to join the Landfill Coalition in doing our own study on PFAS. Essentially, it lets us get out ahead of the MPCA testing and gives us a baseline of where we're at. The cost of the study would be about $4,200 and will depend on how many landfills are in on the study. The $4,200 was the max, and that was estimated with 31 landfills. As of last week, there's actually 51 landfills that are involved. The objective in my mind is to get a baseline so that we know if there's PFAS in the water, if it's coming in before it gets to us, if we're causing it, what the levels are and that kind of thing. So that's what my request would be to join the Landfill Coalition study.
These 51 landfills, you're not just talking Clay County then? Are they all in Clay County?
It's all over the state. Yeah.
All over the state. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we would test 5 wells. 2 of them would be upstream. The other 3 would be downstream. So we would know what's coming in as far as the level and what's going out as well.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, this was brought before the Solid Waste Advisory Committee too, and they also agreed and recommended that we move forward with this. So I would move the request.
I'll second the
Okay,
motion.
we've got a motion and a second to approve the request of $4,200 for landfill PFAS study. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I think there probably are some internal conversations we need to have about mitigating going forward if it identifies something larger. Obviously, this is the first step in that, but knowing there could potentially be some large costs connected to mitigating this issue, I think we should be proactive about having these conversations internally.
Okay. Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Mr. Melton, request to fill Assistant County Attorney vacancy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I do have a vacancy. I just got informed of it just last week in the Civil Division. One of the attorneys that would do Chip's work, stuff you just heard from Social Services. It's actually a big loss, and she's an outstanding young attorney. She's from the Twin Cities area. We knew that when we hired her. She's been doing great work for us. She's been with us about 18 months, and she took a job with Meeker County to be closer to her family and that support system, and that's what she talked to me about. It's a big loss, but it is a budgeted position. We're asking to fill it.
Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
We've got a motion, a second, to fill the Assistant Attorney vacancy. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next thing, we got approval to sign updated contract for construction management services with Gertz Construction. Steve?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This really is just kind of a cleanup from earlier actions from the board. If you guys recall, back in October, the commission voted to utilize Gertz Construction as our construction management for our substance use facility. At the time of the signing of that contract, the building benchmark and beyond, which we know as B3 requirements, were not believed to be part of the contract through the conversations our detoxification staff have had with the state of Minnesota. We know since that point that B3 requirements were needed to be a part of that, and this contract just addresses that B3 requirement and the $44,000 that this board has already taken action on to approve. So with that, I'd yield for any questions.
Any questions from anybody?
No questions, just a comment. We have been talking about this as reported, and did also have a finance committee meeting last week to talk about increased costs that are associated with this project. We're also in the process of collecting all of the additional B3 line items and the financial implication that they were all connected to, and having correspondence with our state elected leadership about how much a $5 million grant really is worth, with the strings that are tied to it being more than 60%. So agreed, this is maybe a cost that we weren't hoping to have, but I think it certainly is justified based on the requirements.
So this 44,000 is an increase to the service agreement with Gertz as a result of the B3 additions.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Campbell, that is correct, and you've taken action on that 44,000 already.
So what are we?
We're just approving there's a new contract, an updated contract that includes the B3 terminology with that figure in it. The county attorney's office has reviewed the AIA document, and it's identical other than that, and the updated per hour salaries that changed at the first year, which doesn't impact the project cost.
I'll move to approve the updated contract to include the B3 fees.
I'll second the motion.
And we got a motion, and a second to update the contract. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, you got the next item 2, which is request resolution 2023-11, execution of amended Minnesota opioid state subdivision memorandum of agreement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you recall, back in December of 2021, along with a number of others, a number of cities and counties in the state of Minnesota, Clay County voted to opt into the national settlement for the opioid settlement. We'd spent a number of months with the AMC in determining whether or not this would be the best step for us. We worked with our county attorney's office. And at the time of that settlement, there was two settlements that had been completed, a Janssen settlement and 3 separate distributors as a part of that we opted into. And at that time, we signed a resolution and the original subdivision memorandum of agreement. Since that time, there's been multiple lawsuits that have settled. And what the state of Minnesota is trying to do is to kind of clean up the process, which will allow future settlements to be covered under this resolution and also the settlement MOA. The resolution 2023 would have you opting into accepting the most recent and future lawsuits. It would also provide permission for me to sign the required documentations to opt in to current and future lawsuit settlements. And with that, I'd yield for any questions.
Do we know of any amounts that are?
So we don't.
0.94% of what?
So the interesting part about a lot of these settlements is we have a figure for the national number. As they move on, we move on a state number. This just to kind of give you, we don't have a state number at this point, but what we do have is a total number for the 5 settlements, Tevia, Algeron, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, is a total of $15.9 billion. And so that would come with the caveat for the entire United States. And so we'll be finding out more information. Just to kind of give you all, I guess, a little bit of background, with the first 3 settlements, we had the Janssen settlement, if you recall, was 5 payments, so 5 one-time payments. And that added up to $270,712. We've received 2 distributor payments. Those are two payments of a total of 18, and that $67,619.78. Last year, this year's payment was $71,065.09. And we also have received a payment from Mallinckrodt National Opioid Trust of $14,035.28. And so I would note the original document and resolution that you guys signed, if you recall, we were told that we would receive $2,093,240.98 minus the 7% backstop fund. If you remember, the backstop fund was, there were a number of counties and cities that went out on their own initially before the state of Minnesota joined the lawsuit. And so that 7% is set to cover the refund. So we haven't received an exact number, but if you look at that, we're at about $1.9 million is where those original first 2 settlements came in. We don't know through the national settlement what the next year's allotted dollar amount is until that comes out. And so at this point, each year will be a figure. My understanding is that at some point, as they catch up, they're hoping to provide an Excel spreadsheet that will show future payments, but right now we're essentially going year to year. And to answer your question, Mr. Chair, we do not know what this settlement will mean, other than the same formula will be applied to the Minnesota.
Is there certain uses that you can use that for then? Are restricted?
Yes, and so part of what you're signing on is that memorandum of agreement provides the guidelines for us to what we can spend them on.
Okay. Board's wishes. We need a motion to adopt that we agree with the thing, or, we got a resolution 2023-11.
So the resolution is actually at the back page of your packet, and we would be looking for a request to approve that resolution, and we would also be looking to your approval to execute the updated opioid subdivision, which is the first portion of the packet.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve resolution 2023-11.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the resolution 2023-11. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I will also make a motion to approve the executing of the amended Minnesota Opioid States Subdivision Memorandum of Agreement.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to adopt the execution of amended Minnesota Opioid State Subdivision Memorandum of Agreement. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed.
Thank you.
Okay, request approval to extend the Clay County Referral Program. Darren is gonna handle that one, I take it?
I am, thank you. Like being on the tail end of everything. It's been a long day already. So as you may or may not recall, on July 15th of last year, we came up with a Clay County Referral Program, which employees can refer people to become eligible for employment here at Clay County. And then there was a referral fee that we were paying to the employees as well. And so I gave you an updated sheet. It should look like this. And it kind of gives you the statistics of what we have found in the last, since July of 2022, and kind of breaks down if the program is working for us or not. So as you see, since that time, we have recruited 32 new employees into the 4 departments that we opened this program up to. It would be law enforcement, corrections, juvenile detention, and detox, which are all our 24/7 operations, and we're having difficulty in filling positions. Of that, we had 26 people that were the actual recruiters of those people. We had 6 full-time people recruited and 26 variable hour recruited. Since that time, when I ran the report, we had 2 of those recruiters leave employment, and 3 of the recruited have also left employment. As you recall, we were paying $500 if the employee makes it to the 6 months probation, and then another $500 to the recruiter if the employee is still here after 1 year. And then the variable hours, we were paying $250 for the recruiter if they make 400 hours of service, and another $258 if they once they make 800 hours of service. So since that time, we have paid out $2,250. 7 people have been paid their first payment, and 1 person has been paid their second payment. If you look at the third box down, it says department breakdown. That's the total payout that we have done so far as of March 15th of 2023. And so what I did was, the proposal on the table is, should we expand this program to the whole county? And I have had some other departments that have recruited people, but they weren't part of the 24/7 4 departments and they were wondering if they were eligible for this, and at that time they were not. And so I think when we met back in July of 22, you wanted me to bring this program back to see if it's been beneficial or not, and so that's why we're here today. That 4th box down basically tells you, and so what I was looking at is, well, what would this cost the county if we were to expand it? Of course, I don't know exact numbers because I don't know exactly how many people are going to be recruited every year. But what I did is I took the percentages of how many people we hired and then how many people were recruited in those 4 departments, and it came out to about 33% of the employees that we hired for those 4 departments were actually recruited by somebody that was already an employee of Clay County. And so what I looked at is how many hires we had in 2022, and in that 5th box there, you see the total number of hires of full-time and part-time and variable hour. I took 33% of that, and it came out to about 43 people. If we're using percentages to say, most likely 43% of the people would be recruited had we opened this up to the full, to all county employees. That came out to a cost, using the factors that we already have currently in place, to approximately $33,000, $469. So the question before the board right now is it the board's wishes to continue this program and expand it to all county employees, or maintain the 4 departments right now of the 24/7 operations for this employee, or for this program? This was taken to the PIC last week. I think the recommendation from the PIC was to expand the program to all employees in Clay County. And so I'm just looking for the board's approval or comments on whether we want to expand this to everybody.
Well, I already discussed it, but, I've had some thoughts on it. I just feel that all of our employees, they're good employees, and I think if they know somebody, I think they're gonna recommend them, I don't know whether the $250 or the $500 is gonna deter them from recommending somebody for a job. Hey, we got a job here at Clay County, I think you should apply for it, I don't think it's gonna, I don't know if it's gonna deter them or not, hinder them from telling their friends about it. So, I know corrections needed it, and it seems to be helping there.
Yep, I think it's really helped in corrections. I think it's also really helped in juvenile detention. If you look at the numbers.
Yes.
We hired a lot of people that were referred in juvenile detention as well. A lot of them are variable hours, so they're not getting the full $1,000. And both the recruiter and the recruited have to still be here after that 1 year, 1 year timeframe to get the full.
And I don't know, we want to withhold any money from people and stuff like that for recruiting somebody, but go ahead.
I know part of the discussion that we had for a long time is the cost at which it costs us for having these positions open. So what is that cost? And additionally, what is the cost of the recruiting that we're trying to do outside and the advertising outside?
Right.
Really, it seemed to be a beneficial tool in the toolbox. Obviously, it's not the only way we recruit employees, but a way at a minimal cost to recruit employees. And if you look back at 18 months ago, when we had our director of the jail here every week talking about the openings, and now fast forward to when Carrie gave the report on the department, we've really done a great job of filling those openings, and it seemed to be something that was of success. And so the PIC committee was hopeful that if we did open it up to the entire group of employees, certainly this board always has the opportunity to stop the program at any point, but in the meantime, would be helpful in filling the openings.
Yeah, and these 4 departments are probably going to do the most hiring, and they do the most hiring all year anyway. If we extend it to, for instance, the attorney's office or, assessor's office or some of those, they just don't do a lot of hiring every year. So I think the cost would be fairly minimal at that point. I think Commissioner Mojo makes a good point that, the cost of not having people when we were shipping the jail people out to different counties was a huge cost to us. And now, not only are they almost full up, but now I believe they're taking prisoners from other counties. So it does have an effect on the bottom line, I believe.
Mr. I'm just follow up to your comment. We incorporated this into areas where there was really market conditions that had an impact on the hiring, and obviously the employees who referred helped help to influence people to come here. I question why we're gonna be spending money in areas where we haven't experienced the hiring process. It seems to me that that's, if we haven't had any problems with those areas, why are we now wanting to pay those recruitment dollars when we haven't any trouble recruiting them?
I guess I would argue that we are having those issues, and I think we can use the highway department as one department to begin with. I mean, that's not included in it, but we have an assistant county engineer position that has remained open since June, and granted, you don't have the department or the county engineer coming to us saying, I want this, but name a department that has had success without issue hiring people. Kathy McKay was here this morning and referenced how hiring is a challenge. I think
How about maintenance? How about, I mean, there's assessors. I haven't heard any of those places. Now granted, they don't have as many openings, but I mean.
Right. I think public health.
Recorder's office.
Has had difficulty hiring. We know, and Kathy just said that. Social services, they just briefed that they have a hard time hiring sometimes. So I think it would be helpful at a minimal cost to also, give an incentive pay. I know from our application, we have a question on there on how did you hear about this job? And a majority of them are from friends and family. And I think also especially in the juvenile detention, they have a younger workforce doing variable hour that are going to school still, and then working variable hour at juvenile detention. I think that's one of the reasons they've been more successful in recruiting people, because those kids are going out to friends and family and parties and whatever and say, hey, I work at Clay County, you might want to consider putting in an application there. So I think some departments will probably benefit more than others. But Commissioner Campbell brings up a good point. If we're not having a hard time recruiting for a particular department, then why would we pay somebody to do that?
I just have a tough time visualizing our Clay County employees. They have a family member or friend or whatever, not telling them about openings that we have here. You have an opening in your department and say, hey, I think you should apply for this, I don't know if the $500 makes a difference or not. I'm not really opposed to it, but I just don't see, we have to open it up there. I have a problem with that. Go ahead.
And just an observation, having been somebody that was recruited under a policy very similar to this in my first post-college job, I think it has at least, it doesn't effectively harm us to pay a modest amount of money to recruit into areas where we're having difficulty. And in fairness, we need to extend it over all of the workforce that we've got. You look at, just this morning, as has been stated, we're trying to find social workers. We're trying to find RNs. We've got to get an attorney. Now, is this amount of money going to stimulate people to go out, for County Attorney Melton's opening and look? I don't know. And certainly RNs, no other RNs. And as desperate as it's been, I would hope that they'd be reaching out to people they know. But this gives them one more reason to try, and to try and get somebody that will come on board and stay here. So I don't see where it's going to do any harm, and it can only do some help.
Well,
Yeah, just add, I guess I've been around recruitment incentives most of my career, and I've always thought that there is value to it. I agree that in fairness to everybody, I think it should be countywide. One thing I think it brings, and I'll just say it happened to me, so in the area I was involved with, I think when you're trying to build something, or, it becomes a conversation with your peers, you're reminded from somebody that, they just helped recruit someone and they're kind of excited about that $1,000 or that that $500, and all of a sudden it remotivates others. So I think they talk. I think again, as Dave kind of said it well, for a modest amount, I think I see a benefit to it. I think the positive of the type of people that it can bring forward, and most of the time, someone's going to recruit someone that they think is going to be good for the county.
I think the other thing that you have to look at is they may have a little bit more incentive for that new person to stay the 6 months or the 1 year.
Right.
And may do, help out, maybe mentor a little bit, whatever the case may be, that if I know that this guy leaves, then I get nothing. But if I can maybe help him along or whatever, that I get $500 or $1,000 at the end of the 1 year, might give that existing employee a little bit more incentive to make sure that the new employee stays employed for that.
And last words, I think it just helps employees become cheerleaders. That's all.
Yep.
I mean, I have to agree with that it's a good incentive for all our employees to try and recruit people. But, like I say, we get emotion on it and stuff like that, I'll support it, but sometimes I just wonder whether you wouldn't be doing that on your own without the $500.
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we extend the Clay County referral program to all departments within the county.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to extend the referral program to all departments, I take it? Okay.
Point of clarification, in the referral policy, it talks about being evaluated every 6 months to determine its effectiveness. Are we wanting to review this? Because it first began July 15th, so will we be reviewing it 6 months from today's action or 6 months from July 15th?
Well, I'd like to make it, this piece for everybody effective April 8th. That's the start of the payroll.
Okay.
The next payroll.
So maybe it would make sense to have it at year end, because then you give it time to see.
Yep, I can certainly do that, and just, it can be part of my year-end report.
Okay.
If that's okay with the board.
Mr. Chair? No.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so the additional dollars, we're going into a budget year where we've already established a budget. Where's the money gonna come from for this?
Well, so far, the money comes from the department that's
But this is a new line expenditure.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Campbell, I think how it was presented in the past was for any month that sits open, we automatically lose, we don't pay the health insurance for that gap, in addition to the salaries. And so the idea would be, what is the monthly $1,500 for health insurance?
Yeah.
And so that by itself pays for the $500 or the $1,000 piece. Now, again, I think that part of that evaluation is if all of a sudden we're filling those positions as fast as they're opening, well, then that comes back to that evaluation piece where we would.
Isn't that part of why we always have revenues over expenditures?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess the one point that you made, that it's an incentive for the employee that did the referral to talk to that person, stay on, in case he doesn't want to stay on, but if someone doesn't want to work here, I don't know if we want to encourage them to stay on. I mean, is he a good employee then? I don't know.
Right, that would be totally up to the department head. If that employee isn't working out, it would be handled through the disciplinary process. There's still a probationary employee, and they can still be terminated during probation if they aren't working.
Mr. Chair, I don't think you were suggesting that our employees would keep on a poor employee or encourage somebody just to get the money. I think the thought process would be is I feel comfortable and confident that our employees are meeting new employees, and they're trying to help them transition in the job. What Darren's maybe was suggesting is you might take that little extra effort to help them process through the new job.
Okay.
Mr. My final comment on this, and again, I struggle where we're investing in an area where there's not a problem, and the demands that we have on our levy, and we're going to continue to have on our levy, there's things that are significantly more important than this, than paying somebody to recruit somebody where we haven't had any trouble recruiting. I won't support the motion for that reason. I fully respect the conversation that's had and some of the positive intents that it can have, but it still is something I think we can spend in better ways.
I guess I've had some thoughts on that too, that's why I brought it up, that I know a big committee supported it and stuff like that, but I'm having a little bit of trouble that we extend this out to everybody. I'm not trying to offend any of our employees for recruiting people, but I think they're gonna keep on doing it, I think that's just common sense that you do talk to your friends and encourage them to come to Clay County, and I hope they continue doing it. I hope the $500 doesn't make that big of, if it passes or it doesn't pass,
I would say that, if I bring the statistics back at the end of the year and we see how the program is doing, if it's not doing what we're requesting or thinking it should be doing, then we can certainly terminate it at any time.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we've got a motion to extend the program to all departments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to go committee reports, or you want to do closed session now?
It's up to you, Mr. Chair. We can certainly.
Let's get the committee reports.
Josh is on. Okay.
Josh is on.
Oh, okay. We'll do a closed session then, okay.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All meeting back to order. Next thing that we've got left here to do is committee reports.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we go to committee reports, I would like to make a motion to approve the 2023 through 2025 union contract for social workers.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Okay, thanks, Josh.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, if I could just thank Darren and Josh Hagum from Pemberton. I'd like to thank for the work that they did. This is the first time that we've had all of our unions aligned at one point, and so there was a great deal of work that went into this, and so we appreciate their work.
I think we probably won't do that again. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we'll go on to committee reports. Jenny, you want to start us out today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, after board, I attended the PIC committee. We had 6 items up for discussion. We talked as Sheriff's Office had a couple issues in regards to hiring, so we did recommend that go through. And then the juvenile detention state grant discussion in regards to overtime and exempt employees, which I talked about when James was here. We had a discussion about union negotiations and updates and the referral program, and then just general HR updates. That afternoon, I also had this substance use crisis facility meeting. We reviewed bids, really went through meticulously line by line items that they had the bid opening the week prior. Favorable bids were received from a variety of different companies. We are continuing to work on some value engineering areas where we're tweaking that. hopeful that the entire bids can come to this board soon, but just working to make sure we're buttoning up some areas before we do that. The next day, I had a one watershed, one plan meeting for the Buffalo Red District. Had several updates from all the different counties on projects nearing completion or upcoming. Had a really great attendance from all the entities, so I did appreciate that. I had a SWAC committee meeting last week as well. We had facility updates and discussed transfer station operations. They did discuss the PFAS testing coalition that this board talked about earlier. Had a really long discussion about recycling in response to Minn Kota's decision to not take glass. There's several concerns that comes up with that based on where does the glass go in terms of recycling. There still are availabilities and drop-off opportunities at the transfer station. Not taking glass does change tonnage. There's some struggles with making sure you're achieving tonnage within the trailers now that they will be full with a lighter material. So did have that. Had the MCC JPA meeting that afternoon as well. Several different issues, roadway easements were discussed there. That afternoon, I also had a MetroCog Executive Committee meeting. As you know, we're in the process of hiring for Cindy Gray's retirement, so working through the applications and did make a job offer to an individual for that. We had CAP LP, Community Action Lakes and Prairies meeting Thursday evening. That was a really, really long meeting. They are in the process of applying for almost $6 million in grant funding that would really change the scope of the services they can provide. Certainly very well needed there, but appreciate their willingness and skills in applying for those funds. So we'll wait to hear from that. They did send a leadership team to the National Community Action Conference. It was good to hear their summary on the work nationwide that goes on through community action. Friday, I had a Facilities Finance Committee meeting with Commissioner Campbell and staff. That was in recommendation at the need to discuss the areas for value engineering. Currently, that project came in several $1 million higher than what we've been planning for. I think there's some ways that, one, we can value engineer our way into that. We do have some B3 waiver applications out there on some components there. As noted, we have created a financial plan that does not include any hit to the levy to build that. There is a phased approach into construction, so we're talking about potential. Is there a potential where we could bond for some items, areas of construction in that down the way in collaboration with another project? Certainly trying to figure out the best way forward for that. We are really trying to not undercut the services provided within that facility as we move forward. And certainly there's some internal discussion that we need to have before it comes to the full board, but know that we're trying our very best to build the best facility for the needs in the clients that they serve. Yesterday, I also attended a MetroCog Executive Committee meeting. That individual that we initially had offered the job to did decline based on a variety of reasons, and I think I'll state those reasons because I think it's important that we know that based on what the general climate is for those areas. Housing currently for like housing was double in the Fargo-Moorhead, Cass and Clay market from the market that they're coming from. Daycare, which is an item that we've talked a lot about, and retirement and pension total packages, which I think this board talks a lot about in the different capacities and boards that we serve on. So that was disheartening, but we did meet yesterday to discuss another offer to a very qualified individual. So hopefully Cindy will retire here in April, so hopefully we can fill that position soon. So there'll be some overlap. If not, there is an opportunity to contract for some guidance going forward. Yesterday, I also attended the Lakeland Mental Health Center board meeting. We did have updates from the Clay County Collaborative. They're fiscally in order for 23, talking about 2024 plans. There's some updates or applications deadlines on April 10th for collaborative funding. I think it's important to note that currently the Barnesville Collaborative dollars are very, very helpful in the school district for the services provided. They receive there. Hopefully we can expand that funding, but it's really been beneficial there. Had a long discussion on the school-based mental health grant, currently trying to increase the funding there. It's about $900,000 in the region annually, and they are serving 2,200 school children with that mental health grant. So really, if you look at the 25 school districts that they have a presence in, that is a vital service. And I know that we've talked a lot about how we are very happy that we are able to have mental health services in all of our county school districts. And an update on the Moorhead building. We're scheduled for completion in September. That continues to go forward well and on as close to on budget as possible. They're nearing and closing of the building. Did talk about the additional space that will be there. There's currently an agreement with Trans M to sublease some of the space. That's a transitional employment services group that provides individual placement and supports as folks with a variety of background needs seek employment. So it's really exciting to see how proactive they are in that. We're waiting on the audit report, which should be released shortly, and I believe that concludes my reports, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Kevin?
Thank you. On the 21st, we did have the Substance Use Committee that Commissioner Mojo talked about, and that was, we met and we were reviewing the bids that had come in on the project, and as was mentioned, we were looking at upwards of $3 million in costs over and above what was estimated to be for that project. And so we took the first step in tackling that, and as a result of that meeting, then we asked, there were certain areas within the bid price where there were, it seemed to be higher increases than other areas. There were a lot of the areas that came in, on track with the bid. So we asked Gertz Construction to review and start the value engineering piece, and I'm going to skip to our meeting on the Friday, which was the Finance Committee, and at that point in time, we determined that if we're going to recommend approval of this project, that we better have some sort of a recommendation or an idea in mind as to how we would pay for it. And Commissioner Moju highlighted a little bit, but so in that process between that Tuesday and the Friday, Gertz did come up with a number of individual items for us to review and consider, and areas where we could throw out or what other things, and so we did come up with $883,000 and some $883,700 and some dollars and change in the first go around. So when you look at the original estimate and what we were short based on when they came in, you remember we were about $1.2 million short before, and then we said, well, we're going to take $750,000 of the money from ARPA that was still in reserves and apply to that, so we were roughly $600,000 still that we'd have to account for And at that time, we thought, well, if that's the end of it, we could probably deal with that in reserves. Well, with this now, it turns out that we're probably upwards of trying to still come up with another 2.1 million. And in talking with Lori and you know, we're still going to do, there's still some more value engineering that's still going to be done. But I think the idea in mind and what Lori thought would be that, or she agreed with anyway, I couldn't brought it up, but was that we have sufficient funds to keep this thing moving forward. And towards the tail end of that, we have a couple of things still that can work in our favor. We have that $10 million new grant that Public Health has worked on. If we get that, that'll solve the problem. The worst case scenario, and we all know that there's a matter of time that our lease on the DMV facility is going to be gone, and we're going to have to do something new there. Whatever we do, it's going to take a financial investment when we move. It's just going to have to happen. And so in the worst case scenario, we felt that what might be short on this, we could incorporate into a bond payment, or into a bond that would cover this piece and anything that needs to be done with the DMV. And there you're putting out it'd probably be maybe 3 years before it would actually be seen on a levy. And because any bond payment does have to go to the levy, but hopefully that would be a small amount that, I mean, as opposed to having to come up with the separate $2-point-some million right now. But it's doable. Certainly it's disappointing that the prices came in the way they did. But then I'll go back then to the Wednesday. We had a Prairie Lakes meeting. And that facility continues to run well. Highlights important of significance is we now have $1,040,000 in our internal service fund, which 3 years ago had nothing. Or 4 years ago, as a matter of fact, we were running in the red. Our cash balance at the end of February was 1.7 million compared to 1.2 million. So the fiscal operation of that facility is doing well. There is going to be a plant shutdown here for 3 or 4 days here the first week in April. Thursday morning, the 23rd, we had a SWAC meeting. I think Commissioner Mojo reported on that. I'm not going to add anything to that. We had the MCC JPA meeting, which Commissioner Mojo also gave a good report on. And also that day I had a Diversion Board Authority meeting. We did get updates from General Counsel on a couple of minor things and some right-of-way issues dealing with railroads. We had a construction update from the Army Corps of Engineers and a new drone footage and property acquisition report updates. And then Friday I had the Finance Committee meeting, which I've already addressed, and that concludes my report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wednesday, the 22nd, virtually attended the Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting. Extremely short meeting, was not much on the agenda. We approved a recommendation for a maintenance contract for $69,000 and had a finance report. Following day, Thursday, the 23rd, attended the Diversion Authority board meeting, which Commissioner Campbell's already addressed. Just one thing, they did point out the work that Joel Paulson and the MCC JPA has lobbied with for a legislative bill for $60.4 million to go towards some of the county projects involved in diversion. And I was pointing out, Representative Jim Joy has been leading the effort on that. We appreciate that support. Also had discussion on the close of the BNSF rail abandonment, railroad bridge. The right-of-way of that track near Horace has been purchased by the diversion, and it's going to save the diversion from having to pay for a new railroad bridge by just abandoning that line. Later that evening, I attended the Lake Agassiz Regional Library Board meeting. Had the presentation of our annual audit. There was an unmodified opinion and no instances of noncompliance. It was a good audit. Had a discussion with the director, Liz Lynch, about some of the legislative efforts that are being made in the state legislature this session to get adequate support to our state libraries. Had the election of executive committee positions. Laura Caroon of the Moorhead City Council was nominated to an at-large position, or voted in, and I was nominated and voted in as vice president for this year. And we also reviewed and made some recommendations to the director about an open forum policy to where people, the public, can come to meetings and speak. And there's going to be a few adjustments to the policy that was offered up, and then we'll vote on it next meeting. And that completes my report. Paul?
Going back to Tuesday, had a meeting with our adult mental health LIC. Real quick on that, there were probably 30 people there, good showing of with the nonprofits trying to identify gaps in services among adult mental health. I was very happy with the, and it was good to hear the report we had this morning from our social service department. That was missing some of the good performance modeling they're moving with adult mental health. Last month, as been directed, we got a small report from Houston Wellness and Wellbeing Communicating. We went to the Health and Mental Health Bank in the LIC, and met with a representative from Joy, and Senator Joy, Senator Kupek, and Representative Keelan. Been reviewing the bylaws. Oh, well, thank you. I can hear myself now. The bylaws had been gone through and mostly wordsmithing, but making sure we had clarity. With Adult Mental Health Month coming up in May, my understanding is this group, the Adult Health LIC, will be doing a presentation to the board. And so look forward to what they have on that. Other events, they want to get the word out about the work they're doing collaboratively with other agencies in the area. They'll have a booth at Breakfast on the Farm on June 3rd. They plan on having a booth at the county fair, and then Dilworth Local Days. You'll be there, won't you, Frank?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we adjourned on that one. Okay, then city planning, along with Moorhead City Planning Commission, which I'm on, was asked, along with the city council, to go to a neighborhood meeting regarding the Classic Touch Lounge up on 1500 First Street or 11th Street North. Anyway, we were up there for a couple hours, and we listened to concerns about the business and its hours and the noise and a few other things as Moorhead was putting together their conditional use permit. Good discussion. Neighbors want them to succeed, just want to make sure that there's some protections that they may have being neighborhood right up to that. And last night at the city council meeting, that CUP was approved with its conditions. On the 23rd, I was at the same Community Action Partnership for Lakes and Prairie that Commissioner Mojo talked about. She mentioned the grants. adjustable add shortly. We did a annual performance review on the executive director, Lori Swartz, and just very high marks, and she received from people involved and how active she is and has taken this CAP LP to a higher level locally, state, and federally. Also, we did we passed the final revisions of their CAP LP bylaws. And that's what I'd add to that. And then yesterday, I was with, again, as a steering committee with the Cascade Food Partners, the Food Commission. And just let you know that there's videos out now that I know for sure you can get them on Fargo Public Health, and there might be other places, but about things that they do for food. And the one yesterday was about gleaning. So through the Food Commission groups, there's going to be opportunities during the year to go out and glean producers and get that food to places that it can be utilized in our community for those that need it. I will be hosting Coffee with the Food Commission on Wednesday, April 12th. From 4 to 5 at the Roasted Rail Coffee House in Dilworth. Try to get public, and any of you that want to come, we'll have a discussion about more information about the Food Commission, and also discuss maybe how else we can widen our services to the public. Next meeting for the Food Commission will be May 10th. And then lastly here is our barnyard chickens. Again, that ordinance is in place, I think totally in place in Fargo. If not, it's very close. Moorhead had the first reading of it last night of what their ordinance will look like in Moorhead, and that was approved. And West Fargo sent out a survey to its residents about having backyard chickens, and 1,475 responded, and the majority were favorable. So I'd like to see what that town does on that. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. I had a meeting last Tuesday, the Personnel Issues Committee, and that's either we discussed it at the meeting this morning or Jenny covered that. Also, the Buffalo Watershed, one watershed, one plan. The Buffalo attended that, I think last Wednesday it was, or yeah, I think it was Wednesday that, at that meeting. It's good to hear all the projects that are going on there, and the same thing, yesterday I went to Ada to attend Wild Rice one watershed, one plan there, and they received $371,000 a year. They only spend half of it, so they got a $686,000 left over, plus they're getting another $1,371,000. So I think this one watershed, one plan is working out pretty good for the watersheds, so it's, Becker Soil Water Conservation District reported Clay, Clearwater, Monoman, Norman, East Polk, West Polk, and Wild Rice. So, they're all spending some money, and it's just, it's still leftover money. So it's one fund that's getting supported pretty good. So all good reports on what's going on in the watershed. And those are my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, I also participated in the PIC meeting that has been well addressed. Also on that afternoon, participated in the bid discussion in regards to the substance use facility that's been addressed. On the 22nd, we had county management. We talked a number of HR matters. We used the B word, budget 2024 is coming. Darren has started that process, and so we'll be looking at timelines coming here soon. Talked about the building projects, and then really had a good discussion on some of the challenging behaviors that staff are seeing over at the Family Service Center. And so that's something to keep an eye on. On the 22nd, I also had department head evaluation. The 23rd, we had a couple different meetings with Darren on a series of issues within the county, and also had another department head evaluation, and also the MCC JPA meeting that's been addressed. The next day, I had another department head evaluation, a finance committee that has been also addressed. If you recall, last week I did mention that we'd received a request to speak before the board, and the person did not listed it that last week as the date. I did have the opportunity to talk to Kim Severson from Ulen. The issue that he wanted to bring forward had to do with redistricting and I guess having a concern that all of the commissioners, he was clear to say he has no issue with any of the commissioners in Clay County, but that was concerned that every one of the commission positions were close to the city of Moorhead, west of 9. And so we talked a little bit about redistricting, and I did reach out to Mark Sloan. Mark Sloan did reach out to Mr. Severson. I think there's a better understanding. He no longer wishes to come before the board, but just wanted to note to you that we did have that conversation. We did receive a second request to speak before the board, and we've been unable to talk to that person at this point to line something up, so that may change in the future. Just wanted to note, we have our rural city-county meeting in Barnesville on Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. We thank Barnesville for their willingness to host. We've talked a little bit about risk management. We will be hosting MCIT on April 5th. They will be coming here for the day to take a look at all of our buildings that have $100,000 of value or more to verify that we have the proper insurance coverage on all of our buildings. On February 28th, as you recall, Matt Jacobson brought forward a contract amendment for the Buffalo Red flood insurance study. You voted to cover that cost of $35,066 with the understanding that we would be requesting of the Buffalo Red to pay for half of that as they had done on the other two amendments. Their board did approve that payment. We did receive that check this past week. I would note for those who shop in Moorhead that April 1st, the half-cent sales tax does go into effect, and so if you look at your receipt, there'll be an addition there. And lastly, I should have caught it earlier today while he was here, would just want to publicly recognize Steve Lansom. His last day will be Friday. For those interested, there will be an open house at the Law Enforcement Center from 1 to 3:30 to celebrate his 32-year career. And that concludes my report.
Okay, anybody else with anything to add? Hey, we're finally adjourned.